So I know you want to change the topic. So I know you want to change the topic. So I know you want to change the topic. So I know you want to change the topic.
Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome. All right, let's get into it. Wonder if I could probably upgrade my Discord. Ooh, look at that. That's clean. Ooh, that's clean. Ooh, Nelly. That is what we're talking about. Bum, 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 bum. All right. In the meantime, let's just watch some apologetics videos. Maybe get the juices flowing. If anyone's in the chat and wants to hop in and drop a question or a comment, or let's see, what's gonna be the best way for me to watch apologetic videos? Let's look up. First of all, let's switch to. What should we watch? It's pretty funny. Trump breaking down Catholic sacraments. That could be funny. Why Terry Crews cheated on his wife. This could be interesting. Let's see what Ruslan's up to.
There's moments of like, oh, is this a glitch in the simulation? I understand what I understand on a very surface level.
Sure.
But I guess the if we can't define what does no mean, right? I think that's a tricky part to then navigate.
I'm sure we can define no.
Okay.
I didn't come prepared with a definition.
Okay.
Give me a few minutes and I might be able to come up with one.
We can Google one, but you don't like the dictionary. Okay, so I don't want to get too philosophical because you're probably way smarter than me on philosophy. But
well, that's why I do want to get into the philosophy.
Because you're smarter than me.
No. I'm definitely not.
Because I could own you.
No.
Okay,
no.
So yeah, the epistemic certainty is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because though I believe and I have confidence in, I think that I know on the other side of walking through the experience to truly know it. Case in point, I believe I'm heavy right now, about 20 pounds overweight, 25 pounds overweight.
You look fantastic.
Thank you. I carry fat.
Frickin' model.
I carry fat well.
Look at that jawline.
Yeah, right. I believe that I, in 75 to 90 days, can get back down to 15% body fat, have abs, look great.
Sure.
I believe that because I think there's enough evidence there, but I know that because I've done it before. Right? Like I've done it before, therefore I am certain of it. And yes, okay, I'm 40. Last time I did it, I was 38. My body's different. Maybe my metabolism is different. But I know where the ladder is to get to the said result that I've gotten before. And I think that when we're talking about aspects of faith and aspects of certainty and aspects of what is knowing, I think some of that, not all of it, but some of that is on the other side of walking through said experience to truly know it. But going into it, I have enough confidence. There's enough measurable data that I could say, I think this is generally true, though I may not be able to grab an experimental, what is it called, telescope and break down the molecules of the proteins of the chicken that I got to eat and empirically prove that chicken and broccoli and sweet potatoes are going to get me the results that I want, keep me more satiated, give me the fuel I need to do the workouts, and the protein synthesis is going to give me the muscle recovery to get the result that I want. But I know it now because I've done it before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what so knowing, I think, is on the other side. So I think like walking through something I know it in hindsight.
Yeah.
I know it in hindsight. I know after I have walking through it, where I think this idea of like, I need to know it in an empirical way. I don't know if we could ever empirically prove anything based on some of those things, but I don't need to empirically prove anything because I walk through life with so much faith and trust in so many other things. I trust, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, you could describe it as degrees of confidence, right?
Yes.
So there's a high degree of confidence.
Yes, I like this.
That you could, lose this. I don't think you need to lose 20 pounds.
I need to lose about 30, to be honest with you.
No, God, no. But you have a high degree of certainty that you can do that.
No, confidence. I have a high degree of confidence. And the certainty is on the other side of doing it
Okay, so
before.
certainty is, 10 out of 10 with regards to levels of confidence.
Yeah. But that confidence had to grow. That confidence required me meeting someone that I trusted that gives me the protocol and the plan, and then I believe them enough, even though I go, what you're telling me to do is kind of trash, bro.
Sure.
I don't want to eat chicken breast, and I don't want to do compound lifts.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do 10,000 steps and ride a bike. That all sounds terrible. But you got abs, I don't. You look great, I don't. Let me trust you enough that what you're saying is likely true. And as I walk through that process and then do it myself, I go, oh, something that I was, say, 51% confident in, I am now 100% certain in.
I see. Yeah, I don't even know how to talk about that.
Let me give you an example, and
Yeah.
I don't mean to. And we could clip this out if you're uncomfortable with it. We were talking about your YouTube growing and you becoming a full-time YouTuber.
Yeah.
And you were like, man, I just don't know. That would be the dream. And then as the more I'm walking you through what the immediate steps it would take for you to get there, the more I'm giving you practical systems,
Right.
whether you accept those systems or not. And I'm giving you ideas, and maybe they're ideas that are terrible for you,
I'm not
right?
sure if I ever get this working out example. I've heard Ruslan give that a few times, and it's never really gotten all the way through to me. Should we watch this? This is what I want to watch. This is what I would prefer to watch, but that's not the theme of this channel right now. This is crazy though. If you guys haven't. Where should we go? Where should we go? What should we talk about? Debates. How about that?
Gavin, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure, and this is probably the last technical thing is you're frozen again, so I'm going to refresh the page.
All right.
The last of the flaws to work through.
Yep.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, I think, yeah. No, thanks for having me, Tom. Happy to talk with you. Yeah, I'm a pastor in Southern California. My academic training is in historical theology. I'm married with 4 kids, and also love doing apologetics. Gosh, that's a brief overview.
Cool. I'm an atheist. I run an atheist YouTube channel and talk about reasons to believe in a God. Would you mind telling me some of the reasons you believe there are for belief in a God? And I'd like to tell you my positions on those reasons and hear your thoughts on my position.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll mention maybe my top 4 that I kind of boil it down to in my own mind. Maybe I'll just state them all up front, and then we can kind of dial back into them however you want to. But I would say, first of all, I think God is the best explanation I know of for the cause of our world, for why our world is here and why anything exists at all. Secondly, for the nature of our world, in particular, the fine tuning of the physical constants that make life possible in our universe. Thirdly, for the nature of morality, if I understand your position correctly, and a lot of my approach in this dialogue will be just questions of ignorance, trying to get to know you better, because I haven't watched a lot of your videos, but I watched a couple. But I think we'll agree on objective morality, but then we can talk about what's the best explanation for that. I think God is the best explanation for morality being objective. And then lastly, Jesus of Nazareth, I think is best explained, his life is best explained on the hypothesis that there is a God. There are other reasons too. Some of them are harder to leverage into an argument. So like I'd acknowledge that personal experience is a huge factor for me. That's harder to argue from, to convince another person from that, but that's definitely a reality for me. None of this I approach as kind of like math, it's very complicated. So, but those are 4 of the testimonies, and I'm happy to unpack any of those 4 more fully if you want to, or, you can press into whichever one you want to, or I can explain them more if you want.
Sure. So you mentioned essentially the cosmological argument, teleological argument, moral argument, Jesus, and personal experience. Personal experience is one I don't really go into very much because I think that it's very personal. It's not really obviously it's not proof for anybody else. So that wouldn't really be, I wouldn't take any issue with that. But let's go backwards, I guess. Start with Jesus. Why would Jesus be evidence of a supernatural realm?
Okay. Yeah, this is a fun one. I find Jesus incredibly compelling. here we're into sort of history, and basically the idea here is we've got to have some kind of account of Jesus. Who was he? You know, it seems to me that there are a limited number of options. C.S. Lewis did the famous Lord, Liar, or Lunatic argument. I think one of the weaknesses of that is there's other categories, one of which would be lunatic. Or no, sorry.
Legend.
Legend. Thank you. Lord, Liar, Lunatic, Legend. Because it assumes that Jesus did claim to be God. But as I've looked into that, I actually think that none of those four options is easy, in my opinion. In fact, on all of these arguments, my intuition is that there's not some kind of easy, obvious slam dunk approach. But I think the least difficult option is Lord. I don't think he's a lunatic. I don't think he's a liar. Both of those are very kind of laborious conclusions to come to, in my opinion. And Legend, I don't think is plausible. I mean, you know, the way I've worked through this is just combing through, you know, engaging with Bart Ehrman and the best that I can find on the other side, looking through the literature. I just think that there are good historical reasons, even if one doesn't assume any particular view of the New Testament, just on historical grounds. Even if you go with the most radical, skeptical frameworks for what parts of the four Gospels go back to the historical Jesus, you're still left with this core set of claims that seem to me to reflect an awareness of divinity. You know, you look just in the Gospel of Mark, which is often taken to be the earliest dated, for example. You know, you're starting off, and right out of the gate, the conflict that drives the Gospels between Jesus and the Pharisees is set in terms of blasphemy. He claims to forgive sins. Now, of course, Jesus doesn't go around saying, hey, everybody, God is a Trinity, and I'm the second member of the Trinity. And there's even passages where he conceals his identity. But the way that Jesus functions is with this powerful assumption of divine authority. And he in the context of that, he does make claims that I don't know how to make sense of, other than that he's claiming to have divine authority. The initiating example in the Gospel of Mark, which pretty much all the scholars admit goes back to the historical Jesus, is he forgives sins. The Pharisees assume, he says to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven. The Pharisees are agitated and say, who can forgive sins but God alone? And Jesus's response to that seems to not say, oh, no, I'm just announcing that God has forgiven his sins. He says, no, so that you know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. And then you just trace that thread all the way to the ending of Mark, where he's accused of blasphemy by the Jewish high court, leading to his crucifixion. And so basically, I would say, even if you accept the higher critical standards that want to lop off a lot of the testimony in the Gospels as not going back to the historical Jesus, you're still left, even on the most radical proposal, you're still left with a set of claims that seem to me to reflect an awareness of divinity. And then we pivot to the question of what's the best explanation of that? And, you know, I don't base everything just on this, but because I'm already for other reasons open to the idea of God, I look at Jesus and I say, this is really compelling. This person seems good. This person seems sane. And this person seems to be making a claim like, hey, I'm the revelation of the God who created the universe. I'm the answer to the world's problems, and so on. I just find that really gripping and really compelling.
Yeah, you mentioned that there were more options. I totally agree with you there. For me, one of the additional options is that he's just a normal human who thought he was God, which I don't think that would count as a delusional. Like, you've heard many atheists say that people who believe in God are delusional because they believe in like a imaginary friend or whatever, right? You've heard that argument?
Yes.
But like no psychologist, no doctor is ever going to consider just a Christian to be delusional because they believe in a God, because it's just a normal human belief. And I think the same thing applies here. It is very possible for a person with their brain acting normally, if given the correct conditions, to think they had an experience with a supernatural being, have a supernatural being come to them and tell them some story, and that not have them be just delusional because they had this.
I want to let Gavin, obviously Gavin's going to give a better response than I'm ever going to give, but I mean, that's a pretty radical statement that a non-delusional person could forgive sins. Not exactly sure how he gets it. So it's kind of strange for the atheist position to say it's not delusional to believe that you are God. That not only did you meet God or talk with him or have some experience of the Holy Spirit, for me to go out into the streets and start proclaiming, I am God, and then, of course, performing miracles, that's part of the story that he wants to leave out. But that the atheist would look at me and say, that person is delusional. I mean, anybody would. The Christian would, too. So that's a bit of a weird claim to him, for him to say that Jesus could claim to be God and not be delusional, and also not be the Lord. Not actually. This whole thing is hinging on either Jesus' claims are true or they're false. And then there's a couple other ways that they could be false. So if they're true, bada bing, bada boom, Jesus is God. There you go. You've got your religion. You got everything you need. If it's false, well, he's either lying on purpose, a liar. That's the liar option. Lunatic, he's delusional. Gavin pointed out that it could be legendary, like that Jesus never said he was God, and then people put that on him later. So it's sort of like the apostles that, and they wouldn't have to be liars, but they're just misinterpreting. But I think Gavin has a good explanation for that no, Jesus does claim pretty explicitly in Mark to be God. So then this guy's adding an extra dimension, which is that Jesus could be lying and not know he's lying, and also be rational. So he's not a lunatic. Let's see how that gets fleshed out. Let's see what Gavin has to say about that.
Pretty normal human experience. And in that respect, the fact that Jesus could have thought he was God, but may have been incorrect about that, just may have been something he believed because he thought he had a spiritual experience, wouldn't make him delusional or a liar. It could have just been a normal human belief, just like people who believe in a God or a normal human.
But it's not a normal human belief to believe you are God. I mean, maybe in New Age, but even they understand that they're not the creator of the universe. I mean, Jesus says at least in John, I mean, he's going to deny that Jesus says this, but in John, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. So, I mean, it doesn't get much more explicit than that, and it doesn't get crazier than that if it's not true.
Belief. So the same quadcotomy that you present for Jesus, the liar, lunatic, or Lord, would also apply to literally everyone else who's ever claimed to be God or claimed to have a spiritual experience of a God. And I don't think in any of those cases, I think the correct answer in all of those is probably they just had a normal human experience and were probably confused. So I wouldn't say Jesus was necessarily a lunatic, just like I wouldn't say any Christian was a lunatic just because they believed in a God. And I wouldn't say he was Lord, because I think it's better explained by natural human psychological phenomenon, because there are so many of these cases that happen. And I imagine you would agree with all of the other people who claim to be God, or all of the other religions who claim to have personal experiences of a God. They are probably mistaken. But I don't think you'd ever call them liars or lunatics. And I don't think you'd agree that their God is correct, right?
Well, I would make a distinction between the experience of God and the claim to be God. So you were referencing, people who've had an experience of the divine, and that can just be a normal human experience that they're in error about. Certainly so. And yes, that would be the general category into which a lot of general religious phenomena you put into, though not necessarily all. You could have an account in which, the true God is obliquely being experienced in other religions in various ways and so forth. But I would say that it's very different, it seems to me, from experiencing God to claiming to be God. If I say I experienced God, it seems to me more plausible to be wrong about that claim than to say I am God. I made the world. I'm the light of the world. Yeah. I can forgive your sins, and I'm going to judge every human being at the end of history. Boy, I mean, so help me understand how you would interpret Jesus then, because if he's making claims like that, this is more than an experience, a spiritual experience behind that. There's this enormously inflated view of one's own authority. How do you get that and not be a lunatic?
Well, again, I don't see any difference between the two, because you've had a spiritual experience, your personal experience of God, right? And so if you had a personal experience of God and he told you that you are his son, I mean, I don't see you believing that as any different from you believing the personal experience that you did have. So,
well, how... What? You don't see any difference? How do you see no difference? between one, I mean, again, this isn't the whole thing that his arguments depend on, but so presuming that there is a God and that he speaks to you and he says, Gavin, you are one of my many creatures, as in I created you and I am your God. That has the exact same weight as if you just said, I am the God that created everybody else and everything else. I don't see how those two things are the same at all, really, unless you're kind of playing some kind of mental gymnastic where you're saying every single spiritual claim equals each other. But certainly not. I mean, that would be to say that the Scientologist's spiritual claim equals any other religion, Buddhism or something. No, of course not. The Scientologist's spiritual claim is just so that they can get money. Whereas Buddhism is genuinely interested in helping people. Okay.
If God himself came to you and told you you are his son and that you have all this authority, then you proselytizing about that experience would be no different from you proselytizing about the experience you did have. So I don't see any difference between Jesus believing he was God and you believing God exists. I mean, you both claim to have access to this ultimate authority who's going to judge anything. The only difference is the relationship to that authority, which could presumably only be known from what that authority tells you. So to me, I don't see any fundamental difference between the two, especially because claims to or beliefs of being God are actually relatively common in humanity, both Donald Trump-esque kinds of just believing you're a God and people who believe they're sons of deities. Like we have at least 10,000 references of people who claim to be the son of God, Jesus' second coming, not even including the other religions, the people who are seen as religiously holy in other religions, Hinduism, reincarnations of gods, all kinds of things. So the fact that people believe that they were God or had some access to the divine is a relatively normal claim for human beings. And you would apply this exact same trichotomy to every single one of them. Are they liars? Well, no, I don't think they're lying. I think they believe what they're saying. Are they lunatics? No, they're not. They don't seem to be psychologically crazy. They are able to hold conversations. They have pretty good logical skills. Are they lords? Well, no, I don't think any of them are actually gods. The fourth option here that I usually accept is that they have normal human brains, which make lots of kind of anthropocentric fallacies, type 1, type 2 errors, where they have these experiences, which are most likely dreams or some other kind of psychological phenomenon, and they interpret those in a way that any rational human being would probably interpret those. And so I think Jesus would be in the same boat here. I don't think he's a liar. I don't think he's a lunatic. I don't think he's Lord, and I don't think he's a legend. I think he has a normal human brain, and human brains operate in very incorrect ways. We make lots of psychological mistakes. And so he probably justifiably may have thought he was actually God, because for the same reason that all the other people, the tens of millions of people who thought they were reincarnations of a deity, also thought they were justifiably a God, and they were rational human beings. And so I don't think that this trichotomy presented by C.S. Lewis is actually a good one, because there are lots of people who believe this, and none of them would qualify as any of those. They would not qualify as liars. They would not qualify as Lord, and they would not qualify as lunatics. They're all just normal human beings who have psychological flaws. And I think that is a far more plausible explanation than any of them likely being actually connected to the supernatural being who created the universe.
Okay, just two quick comments, and then we can keep going on this or go to a different argument. First, the difference, you referenced, I can't remember what exact number you said, but you referenced a huge number with respect to people who claim to be God. C.S. Lewis addresses that. The difference is he's in a Jewish context, so it's a different definition of the word G-O-D. He's claiming to be the transcendent creator of the universe. That's very different from something happening in a Hindu context. Secondly, I just would stick to my guns. I think it's manifestly clear that claiming to experience God is not the same thing as claiming to be God.
Yeah.
Just think of it as a different example. If you claim to experience a ghost, that's a fundamentally different claim to be evaluated differently than if you claim to be a ghost.
To be a ghost. That's why Gavin is so smart, man. I mean, he's right on. And so, the initial points, like, it just seems, it seems like there is a difference between saying, I had a arbitrary spiritual experience versus I am that which all spiritual experience flows out of. Those just seem like two completely different levels of claims. But beyond that, way beyond that to claim I am that ultimate God, God, to claim I am him before Abraham was I am, in the Jewish context is completely blasphemous, completely heretical. And nobody denies that Jesus is a Jew. So essentially, the claim isn't for anybody to believe they're a God, they must be delusional, but for a devout Jewish rabbi to claim that he is God, you would have to be delusional. You'd have to be a lunatic. At that time, in that context, it just seems self-evident that this is a weak point. The first point made by the atheist, that Jesus isn't, that we don't have to stick to the trichotomy of was he liar, Lord, or lunatic. And then Gavin adds in legend is a possibility. That's another possibility. This guy says he doesn't have to be any of those four. He could be a normal human being who reasonably thought he was God and then made all these claims, and the religion follows. I don't see how you can be a normal Jew in the first century and think that you are God. That is completely radical. You'd need some sort of like, because he's talking about like, well, there's millions of Hindus who think they're gods. It's like, yeah, but that's a completely different context. The way they talk about gods, there's like 10,000 of them or whatever, is completely different than the way that a first century Jew, a Hebrew person, would think of God in any meaningful context. So, yeah, I think that point falls apart. Interesting. Let's see what they got to say.
And you would have take the two claims very differently. If you claim to experience some other entity, it's far more easy to be in error about your own experience of something. When you're claiming to be God, if you're claiming I made the world, I will judge the world, what kind of spiritual experience would you see behind that could generate such beliefs that wouldn't rise to the level of lunacy?
Well, there could be many. Like there's many examples of people who said they had past lives or were reincarnations of a god, so they had memories of them being a god. I would try to.
But that's little g God, as in like some sort of supernatural entity. Even those people, and I'm well versed with these new age people, trust me, I was in that world. I know a lot about what it's like to think that you are God. I've said, we're all gods, man. We're all gods, dude. But even you have to admit that you're not God. G-O-D. As in the creator, the physical creator of the universe. You don't have control. No new age person, no matter how much they believe that they I form my own experience, therefore I'm God, man. None of them believe they can control the weather, right? Well, some of them do. Usually in large groups, they do like a rain dance or something. Very few of them believe they can control like the weather or the universe or the cosmos. So it's really, really not the same thing to say that I am the creator of the universe and I believe in some sort of spiritual dimension or past lives, or maybe at one point I was Krishna or what, It's really a more radical claim to be a first century Jew, for which, by the way, there are no other gods. Like, there's no other gods. Everything is subservient to God. And then for a rabbi from that tradition to come and say, no, I am that God, completely radical. I mean, it makes no sense. You would have to be a lunatic to claim that if it weren't true. And if you're not lying. And the legend thing even falls apart because he does clearly claim in Mark to be God. And he accepts worship. He accepts the charge of he doesn't accept that he is being blasphemous. But he doesn't say, no, I'm not being blasphemous. I was just speaking on behalf of God. I'm a prophet. No, he says, yeah, charge me with what you will. That's what I said. So, yeah, this point I think falls apart. Let's see if they move on to something else.
I imagine would kind of be what Jesus would presumably have also experienced.
What's up, Brandon? You almost missed the party, bro. You're about to miss the party anyway. But welcome, dude. How you doing? Happy President's Day. You celebrating? What you celebrating, Brandon? Got any questions today, bro? You want to keep watching this this debate that I was commenting on? You let me know, Brandon. In the meantime, we're just going to watch this debate because it's kind of fun.
If he thought he was a god, he'd probably have memories of himself being a god or something. And so I don't see that as any different. And the scale of a god, you mentioned, say, being the one god in a Jewish context as opposed to Hinduism, which many gods, that makes absolutely no difference because there are many Hindus who claim to be Brahman or the greatest god or a reincarnation of the greatest god. The particular god that you see really wouldn't make a difference.
You say your kids this school? That's fun, man. That's good. Get them kids an education. They're going to need it. Why would you protest President's Day, Brandon? What's the point of protesting President's Day? Oh, it's loud AF. Okay, let me turn that shit down. Let me turn that shit down. Hold on. Brandon, if you're not careful, you're going to be a moderator on this channel soon. Let's see. What about now?
From a psychological standpoint, it's essentially luck of the draw, whichever one you
How's that?
identify with most. So in a Jewish context, it makes more sense that they would identify as the greatest god because there only is one god. Whereas in Hinduism, they're going to be a bunch of people who identify with a bunch of different gods because there's a plethora of options there.
Is the video
But if
still
there's
too
only-
loud? You let me know before I keep going. You're protesting President's Day. That's hilarious, bro. You're just like an ultimate skeptic. Whatever it is, you're a skeptic. I love it. Okay.
only one god, then they'd all just identify with that one god. So the scope of the god here doesn't really make any difference at all. They're all, if presumably if they were all psychological phenomenon, then it would make perfect sense that those would be the ones they would identify with. So there would be
disagree because
from a psychological standpoint. So if we assume these are all just psychological
had it good and
manifestations
then
of
it
our
turned up?
anthropocentric fallacy,
Yeah. How about that?
then yeah, there's no difference here.
That should be
Psychologically,
better,
they're
yeah.
the exact same. Both the generation of a belief that you're the ultimate god and a belief that you're a minor god come from the exact same thing in the brain. There's no empirical difference psychologically between these two phenomenon. And so if it was purely psychological, then yeah, there'd be no difference between the two one way or the other. So I don't really see from an empiricist naturalist standpoint why the delineation between a super god and a minor god would make a difference here.
Okay. Well, I would disagree. I would say the difference is very relevant to the point at hand because in Jewish thought, the distinction between that which is God and that which is not God is much thicker and more qualitative than in a Hindu perspective and in most other places in the world in religious thought. So that's
If you're not clear about what they're talking about, we're kind of trying to go over it. But basically what they're talking about, Gavin gave his 4 reasons for why he believes that there is a God. And it's basically the ones I've been trying to give you for the past 5 days, which is the cosmological argument, the teleological argument, which is the fine-tuning. And then he said the historicity of Jesus, and there was another one. Can't remember. But they're talking about the historicity of Jesus, and the atheist asked Gavin, he says, why do you believe... Why do you do this, bud? What are you really looking for? What question drives you? That's a good question. The answer to why I'm doing this is to glorify God. That's the ultimate reason. The reason why I live is to worship and praise and glorify God. Out of gratitude, out of humbleness, out of... It makes me happier. Like, I know it sounds like, oh, like you're submitting yourself to someone else, but it's really not like that, because it's like in submitting myself to someone else, I also become happier, freer, wiser, more loving, more caring. So it's like a submission that only makes me freer, makes me better. So there's that. So that's why my entire life is guided by the principle of worshiping the Lord and spreading his message if I can. And then why am I doing this specific type of stream, like an apologetic, like prove me wrong, change my mind, like let's talk about it? Well, for one thing, I think if I'm going to glorify the Lord the best, then I'm going to be able to defend him. I'm going to be able to talk about him without fear. I'm going to be able to get into whatever anybody's criticism is and go to the absolute extent of argument and debate. And not only is that gonna stand up because what I believe what I believe to be true. So I'm not afraid of it being false. But I also think that both of us, the atheist or the agnostic and me, will come to sort of like a higher understanding. Like we'll meet in the middle somewhere and come to a higher understanding of what truth actually represents, right? So far you've convinced me of absolutely nothing. A humble person broadcasts themselves daily. Thank you, brother. If I were a god, I would find a better. He does, Brandon. He has many better representatives. That's why he has Gavin. That's why he has all the people that you don't want to listen to, that you close your ears and your eyes to, for God knows what reason. Let me ask you, Brandon, what is the purpose of comments like those? And I can explain the humble person thing if you want, but what drives you? What question drives you? What boredom in your life brings you back to my channel 5 times over 5 days to just insult? Okay. Yeah, I know you think I'm embarrassing myself or whatever. If I'm God, I would ask you to stop embarrassing us. Well, thank God that you're not God, Brandon. That's all I can say. Thank God God is a lot smarter, kinder, wiser, more loving than you. Engagement bait. What does that mean? I know you love me, Brandon. I love you too. But you're just not smart. That's the difference. So like God loves me and he's really smart. Whereas you love me, but you're also an idiot. So that's kind of the difference. That's why I worship God and not comic Brandon. Do you understand? Do you understand the difference between worshiping God and comic Brandon? You idiot. I was talking to myself. I literally was, Brandon, talking to myself for the last 30 minutes until you showed up. So I do appreciate it. And welcome, Alex. Hey, yo. And if you don't want, hey, you know what, Brandon? If you're just going to throw shade all day, will you join the Discord? You said you dropped your kids off at school. You're protesting President's Day. Drop your name in the Discord for once, and let's see if you're a coward or if you... That's right, man. I love you, Brandon. I'm not telling you to leave. Wait, is that right? Is that gonna... I think that was the wrong link. Brandon, I'm not telling you to leave. I'm just telling you you're an idiot. Am I not allowed to state facts? Is that not encouraged to state? Come debate me, Brandon. You're afraid. Get in the Discord. Get in the Discord if you think I'm embarrassing myself. Yeah. Check my eyes, Brandon. Go in the Discord. Put your camera on. Get your mic ready. Weird that I'd... You're hilarious, bro. Okay. What's up, Alex? You got anything going on today, Alex? How you doing? Happy President's Day? Or do you live somewhere else where there's no presidents? Let me know. In the meantime, we're just kind of watching this debate. It's like a soft debate. It's not a hardcore debate, but it's a soft discussion between an atheist and a Christian, and they're talking about why you would believe. Basically, they were addressing the C.S. Lewis trichotomy that he presents between the claim that Jesus made, which is either Jesus was a liar, he was a lunatic, or he was the Lord, the actual genuine Lord. Which is an interesting thing to think about, right? Like, those really are your options. Gavin Ortland here presents a fourth option, which is legend, and that's based on the idea that maybe Jesus never said that he was God or never conceived himself to be God, but then that gets added in later. But in the same breath, and I can disprove it, and we did it the other day, I believe there's good evidence to think that Jesus did say he was God, that it was his intention to display himself as the true one God. And we see that in Mark when he heals the paralytic man, and the Pharisees say, "Who can heal? And forgives the paralytic man's sins?" And he says, then they say, "Who can forgive sins but God?" And Jesus says, "Yeah, I forgive him. And guess what? Now you can walk." So he's clearly saying he's God. So really the options are liar, lunatic, or Lord. Well, is he a liar? What do you say about that? Brandon, is Jesus a liar? Classic comic Brandon with a little circular logic. He goes, God's never existed, therefore God doesn't exist. Very wise, very brilliant. We could all learn a thing or two from comic Brandon about fallacious circular reasoning. I love that. I do like probability. Yeah. Then Jesus probably lied. Another circular argument. Jesus probably lied, therefore he lied. I mean, why do you say Jesus probably lied? Given the fact that all of his disciples went to their horrible deaths confirming that he didn't. When all they would have to say is he lied. That's all they'd have to say, and they wouldn't be burned alive or crucified upside down. Brandon, if you open your eyes, I know you have these weird things called eyelids. I know you have these things over your eyes. They're called eyelids, and they make everything dark and hard to see. But if you just sort of pry them open and you look around, you'll find that there's something rather than nothing. Okay? If you look, you can see that things exist rather than not exist. And we have talked about at length tracing the causal chain all the way back. So what is the possible first cause of the universe? There you go. That's one God. So you believe now, Brandon? Or are you just talking shit because you love it? All right, Elon Musk is releasing Grok 3 in about 6 hours. You hyped on that? Do you think Grok will catch up to ChatGPT? I really want it to. I really want Grok because you can do anything on Grok. You can absolutely present any option and Grok will make it. Brandon, that makes no sense. Back to 1, not 0. Not sure what that means. But expound on that, Brandon. Or actually, you know what, Brandon? Better than that. Better than hiding behind your keyboard and just typing away and saying anything you please without any sort of like possibility of timely comeback. Why don't you get in the Discord? Why don't you hop in the Discord? Stop being a coward. I love you, Brandon, but you're annoying, you know? It would be less annoying if I could talk to you in person, and then I wouldn't be able to treat you like this because I'm a human being. So if I'm looking you in the eyes and hearing your voice, I don't get to just like shoot off insults at you. And likewise, you don't get to just sit behind your keyboard and type away insults, which is almost even worse. So hop in that Discord, Brandon. Otherwise, I'm not really going to engage with you much more. Show me the universe is a closed system. No cause is necessary. Show me a cause is necessary. Brandon, if you think effects don't have causes, there's nothing to even talk about with you. You show me that a cause is not necessary for anything. Even conceptually, think of something that has no cause. Okay? Other than God, ironically. The only thing you can think of would be some supernatural, all-existing, eternal entity that is neither created nor destroyed. By definition, that's the only thing that could not have a cause. But you don't believe in that, and because God doesn't exist, therefore God doesn't exist, right? Okay. Crazy. Alex, you should feel free to hop in this Discord too, man. It's way more fun to just hang out. Exactly, Brandon. Now you're finally asking the right question. The universe is an effect. You accidentally put a question mark instead of a period. An effect of what? Good point, brother. Great question. What could it possibly be? If time, space, and matter are the effect of something, what could that cause have possibly been? Well, it didn't have time because it created it, caused it, to use your language. So it's got to be timeless. Couldn't have had space because it caused space. So it's got to be spaceless. It caused the entire matter, everything that we see, the Big Bang. So it must be extremely powerful, if not omnipotent. Okay. So what's your question, Brandon? Do you believe in God now? You going to church next Sunday? Come on. My miraculous God who intervenes personally can put me there if it's necessary. Right. Yes, absolutely he can. So clearly it's not necessary. But I'm just saying that it would be easier and you wouldn't look like a coward if you just joined the Discord. That's all I'm saying. So it has nothing to do with God or what's necessary or whatever. I mean, you have free will. You freely choose to look like a coward by spewing like sort of random jabs from behind a screen and behind a keyboard. But if you personally, forget God, if you wanted to not look like a coward, then you could join the Discord. Do you understand? Okay. Nothing to do with God. Love it, Alex. Love it. No pressure to you, brother. No pressure to you. Not because you're a believer or anything like that. I don't show favoritism based on that. I try to treat people exactly where they're at. So if you're sort of like annoying and obnoxious, like Brandon, I'm going to be annoying and jabbing and obnoxious to you. That's just my nature. My sinful nature. Maybe I'll be healed of that. Hey, who knows? But to Alex, much love, much respect. You join whenever you want. You don't look like a coward. It's just Brandon. Okay, should we keep watching this video? What should we do? Or should we talk about about Grok? I'm interested in Grok, dude. I think Grok is going to be cool. I like that you can say, draw me a picture of Donald Trump, like, doing something, doing anything. Flying to the moon. And Grok will just make it. And if you go ChatGPT, draw me a picture of Donald, and then you start typing the T in Trump, and then the whole website shuts down. Figuratively. But you can't go anywhere near, like, creating realistic images or prompts with ChatGPT, even though it seems smarter than Grok. I don't understand that. Like, what is their what's OpenAI's logic? Like, oh, we should let's censor everything for an AI program. That'll be good for people. That'll make us more money. What's their game here? What's their game? Did you know people can do that? It's called art. Are you talking about draw pictures? Yeah, I know. What? Brandon, you guy. Yeah, people can make art. Not sure that's even remotely relevant. But yeah, people sure can. I guess what I'm saying is I wish AI could also make art. I wish they could also do that in an unrestricted way because it's just cooler. It's better for society to have open and free speech and open and free expression and interpretation than if you don't think that. I mean, literally, you can ask ChatGPT just like, write me a story about Donald Trump, and it just won't. What happens if we do that? Should we do that? You like OpenAI? Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. Do I prefer AI? This is why we have to be annoyed. This is why we have to be harsh with Brandon because he doesn't understand basic things. Just because I think that AI should have free speech as well as humans doesn't mean I like AI more than humans. That's an insane take, Brandon. And doesn't mean people aren't relevant. People are more relevant than AI to me, personally. Let's ask ChatGPT. This will be interesting, right? Check this out. Should you have free speech? Yeah. If you should have free speech, why don't you? I love how Okay, I didn't say people are. I see what you said, Brandon. You are. Yeah, exactly. Why not hype both? Like, what? How are those things mutually exclusive at all? You just said people are relevant. Yes, they are. Then why are you hyping AI instead of art? Because they're not mutually exclusive. Because art and AI have no like causal relationship. I don't have to like. I don't have to choose one thing to talk about or hype up. Uh, like live on the internet, lol. And then he's just being a little valley girl for a sec. I'm here because people are interesting. You're there because AI and imagination is interesting. AI and imagination are interesting, and people are interesting, Brandon. I know it's hard for you to understand that you can actually, it's going to be a foreign concept. So try to just like picture this. You can actually hold more than one thing in your head at once. Maybe not you, but some people. There are people out there. The vast majority of society can actually hold two concepts at once in one single head. Can you believe that? Isn't that incredible, Brandon? How my time is utilized. Is that mutually exclusive? No. If that question made sense, which I'm trying to assume how it does make sense, still the answer is probably no. Because, like, can't you read a book and sit on the beach at the same time? So you can enjoy nature and read a book at the same time, Brandon? You're crazy, man. All right, let's just ask it. Draw me a picture of Donald Trump. Oh, hello. Oh, wait, it can't draw one. You don't think AI can make art, Brandon? Draw me a picture of the creation of the universe. So you're saying this is not art. What's about to happen is not art. Just be clear. Art requires a human. All right, I'm interested in this. If you want to hop in the Discord and talk about that, it'd be easier. But let's hear it because I know you're a coward, so you're not going to. So type out why you believe art requires a human, and that'd be something interesting to talk about. Nah, that's not art. Nah. Yeah, it is a completely unique image made up of different colors and with composition and intention and beauty. But no, that's not art. Wait, so Brandon. So let me get this clear, Brandon. So you don't believe in a soul, but you believe that art requires a human to make it because they have a soul. You are good at trolling. You are good at trolling, my man. Art requires a soul. You mean the thing you don't believe in. So you don't believe in art. Art doesn't exist to comic Brandon. Not possible. No such thing as art. Yeah, I think a lot of art is totally commercial now. It's just such a funny take. Brandon, you have to explain yourself, and you're probably not going to be able to do it because you lack sort of certain like literacy. Like you don't really think things through all the way. But if we get you in the Discord, then together we can bounce back and forth and think about it. But so explain to me. Explain to me. I was so close. So art requires a soul and a humanity to make, but souls don't exist. Therefore, according to Comic Brandon, art does not exist. You're crazy, Brandon. You're crazy. Makes no sense. Absolutely. Oh. Yeah, but Brandon, you're messing yourself up here, man. This is why you have to actually have thoughts. Like, this is why you have to have a complete thought that has a logical conclusion. Okay, so you do not believe in a soul physically, right? Conceptually, what art is the expression of the concept of a soul. Little confusing. So a soul doesn't exist, but we conceptually create the soul by doing art. Fair enough. Fair enough. Little new age. I didn't expect you to be a little new age like that, Brandon. It is the amalgamation of human experience. Pause. Guess what AI is? It's a large language learning model. As in, all it studies are human experience. All it studies are human language, human stories. Okay? By definition, AI is the amalgamation of at least the language dimension of human experience. So you're saying AI does have a soul. Brandon does not believe in a soul, but he does believe that AI has a soul. Okay? Correct. Physically unreal. Disproven. False, but okay. Conceptually, a soul still exists. I know because I've got a soul and I'm super bad. Well, I can agree with you on that. You do have a soul and you are super bad, Brandon. I do agree with that. The AI doesn't have experience, but human experience is recorded in the language learning model. So the data that the AI uses, and to be clear, I'm not saying the AI does have a soul. I'm saying you defined a soul as simply an amalgamation of human experience. And by doing that, you defined soul as AI, because AI is also an amalgamation of human experience. So the humans that wrote the books that go into ChatGPT, that was genuine human experience creating that book. An amalgamation of those human experiences created ChatGPT. So by your definition, ChatGPT has more of a soul than any individual human. It's absurd, Brandon. Even if it's calculated, Brandon, you're not listening. You're not hearing your own argument. Yeah, I understand calculation versus experience. And you guys can have that debate. It's an interesting one, but you defined soul in a certain way that makes ChatGPT have a soul. Do you understand? Do you want to amend your definition or change it? Now that you realize you've walked yourself right into a corner? Brandon, you silly, silly dog. Silly boy. How do I get rid of this? No one's using the poll anyway. Okay. It's a good question. What do we mean as humans when we say we have a subjective experience of something? That's a good question. I'd say anything perceived with our senses is subjective, is a subjective experience. So sight, touch, taste, feel, smell, maybe even imagination. Like, is thought a sense? Like imagination, mental sense? No. You didn't say that a soul is dependent on experience. You said a soul is the amalgamation of human experience. Did you not? Isn't that exactly what you said? I do not believe in a soul. Physically, conceptually, what art is the expression of the concept of a soul. It is the amalgamation of a human experience. Okay, so amalgamation of human experience is what ChatGPT is. like by definition. So not only does it have a soul, according to you, it is a soul. ChatGPT itself is a soul. Exactly, Alex. Brandon has no idea what he means because he doesn't think about these things very deeply. He just spews garbage and then assumes everybody understands. To be clear, I don't agree that ChatGPT has a soul per se. I guess it's possible, but I don't agree per se that he does. But I'm saying your definition, Brandon, which you so smugly... Yes, yeah, subject, predicate, second grade stuff. The subject being experiences. I love how Brandon will just confidently say a sentence that makes almost no sense and then be like, second grade stuff. Everybody learned this in second grade. Where the fuck did you go to second grade, Brandon? Oh, that's funny. Nonsense Academy? Brandon went to the special home for nonsensical boys. AI cannot make art. Art requires a soul. A soul requires experience. So the first two things Brandon just states without any sort of definition or, well, unless it's the definition he stated earlier, because then these two things cancel each other out. But AI cannot make art. Art requires a soul. A soul requires experience. But okay, wait a second. Wait a second. Experience, bing, 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 isn't the only information that ChatGPT has human experience in the form of language? I would agree that a soul is probably not physical, but it's definitely not just conceptual. It's spiritual as well. That's why I would probably say that ChatGPT does not have a soul. But it's definitely not just conceptual. I mean, there's no sense in which a soul is just something you think of. AI does not experience anything. Yeah, I'm not sure how Brandon knows that, but remember, Alex, when Brandon says something, he just states it as fact without any sort of like proof usually. So, unless right, right. Yeah, it is just really weird to appeal to this like it must have a soul to create art, but he doesn't even believe in metaphysics. Like forget souls, like he doesn't believe in anything metaphysical. So, AI awaits instructions and calculates. End of story. Yeah, and how does that make it not art, Brandon? You have to explain this. You have to define your terms here. What do you mean by soul? Right, and in your lens, great point, Alex. That's exactly what humans are, like calculating machines. Calculating machines. Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you for fixing my internet, Brandon. Maybe you can come over and tweak play with some of the wires and stuff, and we'll get it even better. But you might want to stay out of the philosophical realm. I don't think it's for you. You're hilarious, bro. So funny. All right, should we watch this? Oh no, you don't need to know about all that. How about
Very
this?
relevant to the claim at hand. Because in the one case, for example, you're claiming to be the infinite person that is distinct from the world. Well, that's a far greater claim than claiming to be a god in the sense of something that is within the world.
I don't quite understand the argument you're making there, because from psychological perspective, you zap the same part of the brain, you get both. It's just, we know that the part of the brain that generates God beliefs is a part that is reflective on one's own values, like the God helmet, the certain parts of the brain that you can stimulate to cause a belief that there's someone's watching you, or that a God belief is, or God is over you, or whatever. We know that in the brain, that's the same spot, regardless of whether you think it's a super God or a minor God. So if that part of your brain gets stimulated with an epilepsy or a different kind of a shock or whatever, then it could generate the belief that you're a God versus any kind, whatever kind of God you want to believe in, or a ghost or a spirit or any kind of anthropocentric fallacy. So from a psychological standpoint, there's no difference whether you think it's the ultimate God or a minor God. It's still the same psychological phenomenon in the brain. So I don't see what difference that would make exactly. Like I can understand your argument from the perspective that because Jews only believed there was one God and he had higher authority, they would be more credulous about believing their personal experiences or something. But psychological standpoint, those would be the exact same. It doesn't take more of a, I don't know, more of a seizure to think you're the super God rather than a minor God. It's going to be the same kind of electrical signal.
But it would be the thing that it would affect, which is important to the argument here, is that because of the first century Jewish context, the Jews would be thousands of times more incredulous to believe that you were a God, as in Jesus is the God, than basically any other religion, but especially what they're comparing it to, which is Hinduism, where, tons of people can be gods. This can be God. Cows are gods, and things in the world are God. So if any individual claim that, that's, fine. Maybe they are, maybe they won't. Some will follow, some won't. But for Jews to, just go into this brand new theology with such vigor and fervor that they're willing to die burning on a pyre or crucified lots of times, that's a much bigger jump. That's very distinct. So that's the important context here. Let's see how Gavin responds to that.
Okay, well, we may just have bumped up into a point of disagreement, but just to reiterate, I would say it is different to claim to be the transcendent creator of the heavens and the earth that is distinct from material reality versus claiming to be like Zeus, for example. Now, if it's true that the same part of the brain, because they're just physically different kinds of claims, if the same kind of the part of the brain is involved in the claim I am a ghost as I experienced a ghost, that fact alone does not mean they're epistemically equally plausible claims. To claim to be a ghost is a greater error than to claim to have experienced a ghost. They both could be erroneous. Experience is far more fickle than a claim of personal identity. So I really think it's wrong to say the experience, for me to say I've experienced God is on the same par as Jesus of Nazareth saying I am God. Those just seem to me to be two different claims that would each need to be evaluated on their own terms.
All right, I agree, but I meant claiming that I am Zeus and claiming that I am Yahweh are the same. Those are epistemically the same. Actually, I would say that claiming you're Yahweh, a more powerful God, would actually be less reasonable because he is more powerful than Zeus does. But so my point wasn't about the difference between
he just
seeing a ghost
disproved his
versus
own
being
point.
a ghost. It was the difference about
Jesus claimed to be God and a ghost. Well, yeah, that is the point of this argument, that it is an extremely radical claim. So what this guy was, just so you're clear, Brandon, even though I know you're not actually interested, you just like to basically be a contrarian and counter every single thing you hear. The claim that the atheist is making here is that it's actually not that weird for Jesus to claim to be God. And Gavin's saying that's not intuitive at all. That's not even remotely intuitive. So that's what they're responding to. So Brandon, I'm glad you're on the Christian side. I'm glad you understand where the argument's going.
being Zeus
Well done.
versus being Thor. And in that case, those are the exact same psychologically. But from an epistemic standpoint, claiming to be Yahweh would be less plausible because Yahweh has more power than Zeus.
Yeah, I would agree. Wait, Yahweh has less power than Zeus, you said?
Zeus has less power than Yahweh.
Right. I would agree. That's my point.
Yeah.
To claim greater power is a greater claim.
Mhm.
And I do think you said that the experience of God and the claim to be God are kind of equally claims to be evaluated in the same way. Maybe I misheard.
No, well, I'd say that to clarify, the experience of a God wouldn't make you a lunatic. Just like if I thought I met God or I thought I had memories of being a God, neither of those would make me a lunatic. That would eliminate the lunatic category. So you can do both of those things without making you a lunatic.
Could you acknowledge that one of them is closer? Is one of them is a greater error? If lunacy is here and error is here, claiming you experienced God is a little further from lunacy, whereas claiming I made the heavens and the earth, I will judge every human being, I'm the light of the world, I'm the bread of life, if you don't have me, you're going to die. Claiming those claims is getting closer to lunacy?
No, I would say that from a psychological standpoint, in the field of psychology, to be a lunatic requires a specific set of criteria. Just having an experience or a memory, whether that memory is because you can have a dream and be in like first person perspective, and you can have a dream and be in third person perspective. Neither of those make you a lunatic. And so if you have an imagined story where you're in the first person perspective of a god in your dream, or if you have an imagined story where you're in the third person perspective and God is talking to you, neither of those make you a lunatic. Neither of those are on the lunatic scale. A lunatic is a consistent misrepresentation of reality, whereas having a dream or a delusion and then believing that was real wouldn't make you on the lunatic scale. So neither of those would make you a lunatic unless it was a persistent, consistent thing. Like you are in this moment having this delusion of.
But that makes no sense, because so what he's saying is Jesus isn't a lunatic because he has a memory of, like, I don't know, creating the universe, but it would have to be a consistent lunacy. But it's obviously consistent. He goes to his death. I mean, he spends his whole life proclaiming to be, accepting worship as God. So, yeah, I don't get this point, Brandon. I put electricity through rocks and make them do math. Can your God do that? If so, why didn't he? Obviously, he can do that. What? He created math. He created us, who created math. He created us. He created rocks. He created electricity. So, in what sense? I mean, God did do that. What do you mean, if so, why didn't he? He did. There's your answer. Welcome to Christianity, Brandon. We are excited to have you. We're very excited to have you. You have, like, the seed of logic. Like, you're trying to think metaphysically, which I appreciate. What do you mean, show me? I'm on a computer. I'm looking around. Like, show you what? Show you what? Or are you going back to your circular reasoning where you say God doesn't exist, therefore God doesn't exist? Is that what you're doing? Brandon, I'm showing you. Where do you want to see him? Do you want to see him in nature? We can talk about fine-tuning. Do you want to see him in philosophy? We can talk about the ontological argument. Do you want to see him with your own eyes? You can look around and look at the complexity of the world and understand how beautiful and impossible that is, given some sort of just like pure entropy, mechanical processes state. Do you want to talk ethically? Because we can go into the Bible and look at the ethics that God gives us. Do you want to, like, where do you want me to show him to you? Again, but your assumption, the thing that you keep doing is you go, God doesn't exist, therefore God doesn't exist. And because you can't show me that God exists because he doesn't exist, then all your claims are invalid. Well, you're not using logic, Brandon. You're just circularly going around. You're circling this horrific nihilistic drain. And I don't even know if you realize it. What do you mean, show me your God? Okay. If I were to show you convincingly my God right now, what would that look like, Brandon? What would that look like? You tell me. You tell me what that would look like, and I'll see if I can do my best. But if you can't even think of what that would be, if you can't possibly imagine what it would be for me to show you my God, which I've been doing, I've probably spent 8 hours showing you. But if you still can't imagine what that would even possibly look like, then I hate to say, but you locked yourself in a corner. You cannot allow yourself to see the truth because your most fundamental axiom is there is no God. But you've stated that without evidence. Only your God and me can know that. Ask your God. Well, he showed himself to me. You asked me to show him to you. So, okay. So part of me thinks that you actually are like the Archangel Michael, just like testing me, like poking me with a fucking stick to see like how much patience I have. So Lord, dear Lord in heaven, please send me more patience to deal with Brandon. Because I know he's doing his best, and I know he's here for my edification and for everybody's edification. So bless Brandon, keep him coming back, keep him safe and happy and whole. If he does know you, then rejoice with him, then glorify him. If he doesn't know you, then Lord, please reveal yourself to him because he needs you bad. He doesn't know. Brandon needs you, my Lord. He needs to see you. He needs to know where you are. Show yourself to him if you haven't. Amen. Okay. Do you understand, Brandon? He won't tell you because he can't. Tell me what? How to show himself to you? He's already told me that. He showed himself to me. So obviously I know how he could do it for you. There's a trillion ways he could do it for you. I'm just saying, which one would you believe? Which one would you be open to? For the sake of the human discussion we're having now. I love how you like I ask you a question and then you always refer it back to God. That's why I think secretly you might actually be some sort of like Christian that's like a mega troll. I love it. I know a stripper named Patience. Want to meet her? Yeah, yeah. Is she God? No, probably the stripper you know named Patience is not God. Okay, Brandon, is the written code in the computer games proof for the existence of developers who have written it? That's a great question. I'd like to see you answer that, Brandon. Can you answer if you're playing a computer game and you see code, or you're like, you're running around in The Last of Us and there's an end credit scene and it says written by whatever, created by Hitoshi Nakamura, are you going to say there's probably no creator of the game, or is there a creator of the game? And Brandon, how do you actually specifically respond to the fine-tuning argument other than just saying there isn't a God? How do you respond to that? What is your explanation for that evidence for God? Also, do you like my monster truck? Check this out, bro. That's Megalodon right there. Fear Megalodon. I just went to a monster truck rally. The code that creates the character does not have experience. No. Brandon, you have to follow. You have to slow down. You have to follow the question, and you have to answer the actual question. Alex asked you, is the code of the video game evidence for a creator of the game? Yes or no? It's literally a yes or no. Breath hole is eat hole. Many death. Yeah, very wise. Good point, Brandon. I forgot that they let Neanderthals on the internet sometimes. Okay, so yes or no? Is the code in the video game evidence for the fact that somebody created the game? Yes or no? I don't care if you write code. It doesn't matter. You have to answer the question if you're interested in having a conversation. Is the code being in the game evidence that somebody created the game? When are you going to answer that, Brandon? Are you so cowardly that you won't even join the Discord and you won't even answer a question over typing? We're waiting, Brandon. We're waiting on you. Is the code of the game evidence that somebody created the game? No, just answer yes or no. We're not trying to trick you, Brandon. We're not trying to catch you in anything. We're trying to build an argument. But if you don't even agree with axioms, like premises of the argument, then there's no point in even talking to you, which really there isn't. But I love having you around because you are a good heel. Okay, no, so you come across a video game and there's code in it, and your assumption is that that game was created how? Like it popped into existence? Okay, so you come home after a long day of work. You drop your kids off at school on President's Day because you're protesting President's Day. And then you get home and there's something on your coffee table. You go, wait a second. This wasn't here when I left. And you pick it up. And the game is, you say, Call of Duty 4? Okay. I mean, I have an Xbox. This is an Xbox game. You put the game into your Xbox. And then there's dialogue. There's action. There's animation. There's menus, there's things like that. Your assumption is that nobody created the game? How is that possible, Brandon? Forget the creator. Forget God, Brandon. You're obsessed with God. For someone who professes to be an atheist, you are obsessed with reading God into every single little statement. Do things that are... Do games that are coded to their maximum, to their completion, have a creator? Yes or no? And Alex put it well. Does the code write itself? Does it pop into existence? Do atoms and molecules randomly smash together to create a video game? How does a game get made? How does anything get made with coding? And because I know that eventually, I mean, I have faith in you, Brandon, but sometimes you really make me nervous. You disappoint me when you can't answer simple questions like that. But let's see. Good point, Alex. That's how I like to think of it too. The video game analogy is very, very good. Very, very good. But let's not confuse Brandon right now because he can't get there yet. It is a good analogy. I think it's accurate. I think Brandon is so low. Like he's so like conceptually he's working with such like basic principles and such sort of he's working in a very dimly lit room, if you know what I mean. So it's going to be hard for him to read like sort of more complex analogies and metaphors. We just got to get him on like basic laws of logic. Maybe we should do that actually first for Brandon. So like how do you convince somebody that logic exists? Like you don't, right? It's basically axiomatic. But if Brandon starts to disagree with these laws of logic, then we will know that he's not arguing in good faith. He's just trying to be a troll, which is fun and totally supportive of that. But then we don't have to waste our time like trying to convince him of anything. Because if he doesn't agree with these, then he doesn't agree with anything. So
the laws of logic.
How's the sound on that?
Three fundamental, undeniable laws of logic which govern our reality and thought. These are universal laws presupposed by everyone, whether they realize it or not. We make use of them in our daily life without even thinking about them. And without presupposing these three simple logical laws, one cannot engage in meaningful conversation, let alone reason. So what are these three laws of logic? Number one, the law of identity. P is P. Suppose that P is any indicative sentence such as it is raining. The law of identity states that if a statement such as it is raining is true, then the statement is true. In other words, when we say something that's true, our statements become truth.
How's that, Brandon? Are you following so far? Are we already getting too complex for you? Does P equal P? If I am a person, am I a person? Can we agree with that? Yeah. No, I respect Brett. Yeah, it's good to show basic respect and patience and love and kindness. I know I get a little chirpy and chippy with Brandon because, to be fair, he just insults me. He comes in the chat and just insults me the second he gets in. You missed the first one. He called me Lizard Guy. No, wait, what was that guy's name? Toad from X-Men. I think he called me a Lego, but that might have been me. That might have been me calling myself that. And he just has an annoying way of like speaking, so that's why. But we love Brandon. We want him to stick around. We want him to learn, and we want him to, figure out how he can engage normal people, real people in meaningful discussion and dialogue, which is why I am curious if he agrees with the first law of logic that P equals P. Is that fair, Brandon? Does P equal P? Let me know if you're still here or if we insulted you too much and you went away. Looks like you're still here, but I'm not sure. We love you, Brandon. We just we don't have infinite patience. We're not God. We're not God, so we don't have infinite patience, but we do love you. I'll be right back, by the way. Where are we at? Okay. All right. Well, we might have lost Brandon. I hope we didn't push him too far. But he deserved it, so. Oh, you stuck around on my stream after YouTube recommended because you look almost identical to one IRL friend. Who's your friend? Maybe he's me. My name is Reese. If I'm identical. If Reese equals Reese. No. Isn't that funny that I look identical to that kid and we're just learning about the law of identity? I do appreciate you for sticking around, Alex, because I know I see you in the chat every time. So I know I love that you're hanging out and listening, and I see you. You usually have some very clear and concise and accurate statements. I mean, I'm more predisposed to agree with you. It seems like you're a Christian. Okay, that's not his name. Oh well. Oh well. But yeah, you've got some good stuff going on, Alex. So I appreciate you in the chat. You're always a light in this chat, and you have good contributions. It sometimes helps me organize my own thoughts when I'm talking to, some of these people like Brandon. You can get lost when you're not in the Discord with someone, when you're not talking. You get lost in the time delay. You get lost in all the different chats happening. So there's a lot of considerations there, but you're a good guy to keep it sort of focused, and I appreciate that about you. I'm glad you're sticking around, bro. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. Anything in particular that you like to talk about, Alex? Like anything? Well, let me ask you. Are you a Protestant or Orthodox or Catholic or not even Christian, and you just sort of have theistic beliefs, or where do you stand on that whole on that spectrum? And what do you think about Megalodon, dude? Come on. Megalodon. Come on, focus that. Yeah. I just went to my first ever monster truck rally ever. Got this little toy. It's freaking sick. Okay. Came with a little driver. Doesn't he look like me? Hell yeah. Oh, you left, Brandon. That's all right. Welcome back, brother. Welcome back. Did you miss the laws of logic thing so that we know we're dealing with a real human being? Okay. Welcome, brother. Welcome. We were talking about this. Have you heard of the laws of logic, Brandon, and do you agree with them? If you haven't heard of them, we're going to do a quick recap of this video. But if you know them and you know them well and you agree with them, then we can continue to have a conversation. But I also asked Alex where he stands on this whole spectrum, so I'm interested to hear about that as well, and we can talk about that. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's a real human being. Okay, grew up Orthodox, but these days not exactly sure. Yeah, I went to an Orthodox church because what happened was I grew up Protestant, mostly Episcopalian, but I went to a Baptist school, so it almost felt more like I was a Baptist than an Episcopalian. And then I went full on Brandon mode, atheist, nothing is real, ultimate skeptic. Not nothing is real, but nothing beyond exactly what I can see and feel and touch is real. It's like putting the blinders all the way on, there's no metaphysical realm, there's no supernatural realm. Everything is explained by material science, everything ever, including things before science could have possibly started. Brandon, come on. Brandon, you can be mean to me, but this is just a random dude. We don't want to. You can be mean to me, but this is just a normal random dude. That's so funny. But yeah, so essentially, after many years and a long journey and yada yada yada, I come back to Christianity, and I'm wondering, do I need to be a Catholic? Do I need to be an Orthodox? Can I be a Protestant still? And I did try the Orthodox Church, and it was amazing. It's really cool. I mean, I loved it. I just don't know if it was for me. Like, it felt so foreign to me. I couldn't, like, see myself in it. Even though it felt right. Like, it seems like maybe they have it all right, but it just wasn't, like, me. Does that make sense? So, I'm still looking for an exact church, but in the meantime, I'm going to an Episcopalian Protestant church. So, that's where I'll situate myself. And I do have certain questions about, like, I probably won't become a Catholic. I have certain questions about that stuff. For instance, the primacy of the Pope. Like, do I believe everything the Pope says is infallible, the infallibility of the Pope? No, I mean, I can't believe that. I feel like there's not a real way where I can believe that, and I just don't see that in Scripture. So maybe if someone might be able to convince me of that, I'm open to it, but I just don't see it. Saw that guy in X-Files. Yeah, well, Brandon, you know what? He's not explaining to you how to put socks on. He's just stating certain facts, so you don't have to. You would need some good old Mormon missionaries. Yeah, Mormons are one half step above Scientologists, in my opinion. A friend keeps coming to me. He's like, Reese, I know you're a Christian. Like, I'm thinking about becoming a Mormon. You have any advice? Yeah, my advice is don't. I mean, what? The Mormon church is one of the darkest ones, actually, and that's what the thing that's so tricky about it is that you think it's just these like kind of nerdy dudes in pencil neck ties and white and khakis in the middle of summer, but the structure of it, like the administration of it, is shadow government, deep dark money. The Mormon church is richer than the Catholic Church in terms of like net worth. It's a little bit confusing because obviously the Catholic Church has like secret wealth that we'll probably never know about, and also they have completely like just thousands of completely invaluable items. So if the Catholic Church actually like liquidated all their assets, they would obviously still be the richest on earth. But think about what that means. The Mormon church is the richest church net worth wise in the world. Huh? And it's not from tithing. It's not like they have that many members, right? It's not like they've been around that long. It's not like they have a ton of priceless artifacts and things like original Da Vinci's or whatever, right? It's because they are like hyper capitalists, which capitalism is 100%. That is the best form of economic policy or whatever it is that we have. But these guys are like corporatists. They're like globalist corporatists, not even just capitalists. So I think the Mormon church is one I would stay away from. And whatever those missionaries say, that maybe they say good stuff, maybe they love Jesus, maybe this and that, but there's a lot of shady shit going on at the higher administrative levels that I know are not good. We can look into that. If you guys don't believe me, we can look into that for sure. Yeah, exactly. They own mad properties. Yeah, Catholics have beautiful architecture, beautiful church. Yeah, I mean, I would join the Catholic Church. I'm not that far off from joining the Catholic Church. They're not even remotely as bad as the Mormons. It's really the way that the Mormons get their money that makes them bad. The beautiful things in the Catholic Church, of course. You know, like Judas, so when I don't know if it's Mary Magdalene or someone else, or even if it's clear in the Bible, but basically a woman comes to Jesus and pours this expensive perfume on his feet to worship him before he goes off to his death. And Judas says, "You stupid idiot woman, why are you pouring that expensive perfume on Jesus' feet? We could have sold that and given that money to the poor. I mean, forget the fact that Judas was just going to steal the money. That's the implication, because he got to handle all the money that was going to be given to the poor. But even if he wasn't going to steal it and it was going to be given to the poor, Jesus said, no. Listen, I'm only going to be here for so much longer. You'll always have the poor to give money to. You'll always have people in need to help. But it's also proper to honor me and worship me as God for the time that you can. And so that's how I see the beauty of the churches and the works of art and all the things in the Catholic Church that are expensive, where you go, like, why don't they just sell it all? Why don't they sell it all and give it to the poor? Okay, Judas, fair enough. Judas, you don't think there's any place to glorify God, to worship God with beauty and honor and just like invoke awe? You think there's no place for that? Of course there's a place for that. The Catholic Church, all the churches, give more money to the poor than anybody else in the world combined. But they also glorify God with beauty and glory. So that's the place for that. Read Deuteronomy 22. Read Deuteronomy 22. All right, welcome, Fry Scream. What you got for us? Deuteronomy 22. Let's pull it up. Happy to read it. God says not to make church a spectacle. Okay, but I will read it. Let's pull it up. Bible Gateway. But let's remember that Jesus is the culmination and the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. So whatever he says is going to have more. I'm not saying he's ever going to contradict or cancel out, per se, things in the Old Testament, but his answer to things is going to be the nuanced, the real answer. Okay, Deuteronomy 22. Where should we start? Just the whole chapter? Sorry, I'm just reading some of your comments. Okay, Brandon's spewing nonsense as usual. Fry Scream. Whole chapter. These are the Mosaic laws. All right, we'll read it. Thou shalt not see thy brother's ox or his sheep go astray, and hide thyself from them. Thou shalt in any case bring them again unto thy brother. And if thy brother be not nigh unto thee, or if thou know him not, then thou shalt bring it unto thine own house, and that shall be with thee until thy brother seek after it, and thou shalt restore it to him again. Am I reading this whole chapter? Okay, yeah, I don't mind. In like manner shalt thou do with his ass, and so shalt do with his raiment, with all lost things of thy brothers, which he hath lost, and thou hast found. Shalt thou do likewise? Thou mayest not hide thyself. All right, so return stuff to your community. Don't steal, If you find someone's lost wallet, turn it back to them. Thou shalt not see thy brother's ass or his ox fall down by the way, and hide thyself from them. Thou shalt surely help him to lift them up again. Oh, thank you. Okay, 14. Well, we'll read through a chunk of it. I'm interested in this. If a bird's nest to be before thee in the way, in any tree or on the ground, whether they be young ones or eggs, and the dam sitting upon the young or upon the eggs, thou shalt not take the dam with the young. Interesting. If a bird's nest to be before thee in it. Is this like the proto commandment that we have to not like touch bird? Like, we hear all the time now that like if you find a bird, like a baby bird on the ground or something, don't touch it because then the mom won't come back. Is that what this is talking about? That's interesting. Okay. And thou mayest prolong thy days. So help things out. When thou buildest a new house, thou shalt make a battlement for thy roof. Thou shalt not bring blood upon thine house, if any man fall from thence. Oh, make a fence for your roof. That's good. You shouldn't sow the vineyard with divers seeds, lest the fruit of thy seed which thou hast sown and the fruit of thy vineyard be defiled. Oh, diverse seeds. Okay, like this is like a farming tip, basically. Thou shalt not plow with an ox and an ass together. Another farming tip. Thou shalt not wear a garment of diverse sorts, as of woolen and linen together, right? And these are the types of things, by the way. This is like often pointed to as something that is obviously canceled out by Jesus's ministry. So whatever's about to come that is going to be like the gotcha or whatever, we're already dealing with a lot of these things that have been sort of confirmed to be I don't want to say canceled out, but just like fulfilled. Like, okay, you guys got it. You walked in my ways. Now you have the real way. Now you have the truest way, the one light. And so things like obviously Christians are allowed to wear wool and linen together, right? Maybe there was some ancient reason. I mean, I'm sure there was some ancient reason why you shouldn't do this. But the tradition is allowed to adapt and to catch up. All right, thou shalt make thee fringes upon the four quarters of thy vesture, wherewith thou coverest thyself. If any man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her, and give occasions of speech against her, and bring up an evil name upon her, and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not a maid, then shall the father of the damsel and her mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city in the gate, and the damsel's father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man to wife, and he hateth her. And lo, he hath given occasions of speech against her, saying, I found not thy daughter a maid, and yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. And the elders of the city shall take that man and chastise him. Am I still, Is this the part you're talking about? Yeah. Call in for ice cream. Of course, bro. Of course. Yeah. Always encourage that. Join the Discord. Let's get into it. Because I'm not sure exactly what you were talking about. Yeah. Oh, you want to call me on my phone? Do you have Discord? Can you click that link? It should work without Discord. Like, you should be able to do it in your browser. Or even quickly download it. But I think you can just do it in your browser and join. Let's see what happens when I do that. I'll show you. So I have the app. Yeah, so you can continue with the web version. So if you can just do it on your phone with the web version, that'll work. And we can talk about it. That's always better. Always better. And I'm going to be in this chat waiting for you. Let me see if I can figure out what your point was again. Because I'm kind of missing what your point was. God says not to make church a spectacle. I don't see that in here. Unless you're saying, oh, it's Deuteronomy 14. Let me know for ice cream whenever you can get into that Discord. If you just click that link, it should work for you without I don't think you have to download anything. There should be a web version. They chew the cud, but divide not the hoof. Therefore they are unclean unto you. I'm not seeing where you shouldn't glorify God with the church, though. In fact, actually, just from memory, it's sort of the message of the Old Testament that the temple is extremely central. And the temple is sort of a grand, I know it has specific parameters, but it's sort of a grand building, isn't it? You've got the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy of Holies and a lot of sort of glorified spaces, physical spaces. So I'm not sure what the point is. Or are we supposed to be back in Deuteronomy 22? For ice cream, let me know if you're having problems or... Oh, is this like... Okay, sorry. I didn't see you guys were typing. Okay, Teams, G+, all done. There's got to be a way. 1 minute. Word. Discord is very neat. Thank you. Please start at the beginning. Standing by. Join whenever you can. We'll just keep booling like this. Yeah, we know your position, Brandon. Don't worry. We know your position, Brandon. There's nobody's unclear about that. Nobody's unclear about that. Absolutely nobody. Yeah, Brandon, we know you're convinced of that. The question is, why are you convinced of that when it's so obvious that you're wrong? Okay? You can't give us any evidence. You've not given one single piece of evidence. All you've said is, prove it to me. And then we've spent 8 hours proving it to you. And then you just say the same thing without any counter evidence. You don't even look up what the counter arguments are. I've been waiting for you to say certain actual counter arguments, but I'm not gonna like hand feed them to you. That's sort of on you to figure out. And you don't even use those. So that's why it's kind of hilarious. You do this like circular logic. You don't know the arguments. You're not versed in them, and you have no evidence. Okay. Yeah, you're made of space and atoms, and how did those space and atoms get there? That's the fundamental question, which you like to dodge over and over and over again. And hopefully we're getting fly scream in. Hopefully there's no problem on this end. I'll post that link in there one more time, just to throw it in there. You have all the okay, so if you have all the evidence in the universe that not one God has ever existed, just present one piece. I don't even need all of it. I know you have all the evidence in the universe. So just give me one piece of evidence that there's no God. Oh, what's up, David? Welcome to the chat, brother. Welcome. Right now we're just kind of like bullshitting with Brandon. Oh, we're about to. Awesome. Welcome, brother. Welcome. How you doing, my friend?
Doing all right. Give me a second. I can't hear it that well.
Okay, sure. Hopefully that's not on my end, but
My headphones in.
everyone in the chat, let me know if they can hear our friend. Is it, how should I address you, my friend?
Hey, Ben. Ben's my name.
Ben? Cool. Nice to meet you, brother. Nice to meet you. Where are you from,
Yeah.
Ben?
From Chicago.
Chicago. Chirac. Is that
Hell yeah.
offensive? I don't know. That's just like the only thing.
No, that's right. No. All right. So
Yes.
I was talking about Deuteronomy 22 in that one part where, so basically, if you're a woman, you claim she was not a virgin before you married her, which is on the wedding night she bleeds out, right? That's how they know that you're a virgin.
I guess so. Yeah, I'll take your word for that. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's how they would check. But
Okay. Yep.
with modern scientific evidence, we do know now that less than 50% of women actually don't bleed out,
Okay.
even if they're a virgin on their wedding night.
Right.
So even if they were still a virgin, they, would be chastised for it.
Yeah.
And then I know you were saying how in the New Testament, I know it's a common misconception that people say Jesus, like kind of rules out the Mosaic laws, but he actually says in Matthew 5:17,
Okay.
I have not come to abolish these laws, but to fulfill them.
That's
He doesn't
the
actually condone of the laws, but he says to go out and fulfill the laws.
Well, he doesn't say to go out and fulfill them. He says, I have not come to abolish them. And I'm sharing my screen. I don't know if you can see. You should be able to. So I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. So who fulfills them, you or Jesus?
The people of earth. Jesus says for the people of earth to fulfill these laws. And then even after that one, there's another one where if your son is disrespectful, if he's a bad-mouthing son or whatever, to take him to the gates of the city, and the people of the city will stone him to death.
And that's a Mosaic law or a law from Jesus?
That's a Mosaic law. And
okay, but you're gonna have to qualify this claim that the people of earth are to fulfill them, unless that's in a different verse. But every translation here says that Jesus comes I am not come to undo, but to fulfill. I'm not come to destroy, but to fulfill. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So I'm not seeing any translation that says that you or me or any Christian fulfills the law, but
So wouldn't
Jesus
it be even
fulfills the
worse
law.
though if Jesus himself were the one to fulfill these laws? And by the way, the laws aren't specifically for a singular person. If it was just Jesus carrying out these laws, it's for the entire society. So, it's like if anyone has a son that's acting this way, to take him to the gates and kill him. And
Well,
these directly contradict God's commandments that he gave to Moses before he gave them the Mosaic laws, where he says, "Thou shalt not kill, but unless it is under my command." And I don't know. I can see how that's like.
well,
I just can't see
to
how
be
that's
fair,
a
those
good.
things, that's not what you just stated, strictly speaking, although it is concerning, so we could talk about it. But strictly speaking, that's not a command. That's not a contradiction, because God said, "Thou shalt not kill." He didn't say, "I shall not kill." I mean, obviously, God kills a lot of people in the Bible.
I'm not sure what you're saying here. Thou refers to the person that he's commanding to do
Yeah,
the action
yeah,
or condemning an action. So
yeah.
thou is you. You shall not kill.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah, yeah.
we both are. I'm sure we both understand that, but he then commands people to kill people for specific reasons. And then there's other, where he slaughters the Amalekites. He directs the Israelites to go and slaughter the
Sure,
Amalekites,
sure.
not to just kill them, but to go back and slaughter women, children, innocent
Yep.
babies.
So we can
It's an
definitely.
ethnic cleansing for people that just because you were born in a specific area.
Yeah. So we can talk. Do you want to talk about the Amalekites, or do you want to? Because I'm not sure you got the point about the distinction between Jesus fulfilling the law and the prophets and commanding us to keep the law and the prophets, or that he should keep the law and the prophet. That it's different wording here. Do you understand the difference between that? So if
Well,
Jesus comes and
go a little
fulfills.
more into that, because I'm not sure what you mean by
Okay,
that.
yeah. Let me try to explain that to you. And it's not like a formal proof. It's more like a philosophy or something. The way that I'm reading this, I think the most intuitive way to read this is that, well, because we also find, so it's not that what goes into your mouth that defiles you, but what comes out, right? You remember that famous scene from the New Testament when Jesus, so that
Right.
is seen, that's taken in tradition to be, you guys can eat shrimp now. You guys can eat things with cloven hooves. You guys can eat, right? So that is a way. It's not that Jesus cancels out the earlier law or says that's invalid. Like, it still could be good to not eat shrimp or not eat cloven hooved animals or whatever. But he's saying, now that I'm here, now that the fulfillment of the law and the prophets here, the law is allowed to evolve and be like subsumed into the actual image of God, the real image of God, the most sort of the most accurate depiction of what God wants for us, right? So to fulfill the law and the prophets isn't to follow them; it's to fulfill, it's to complete them. So like, yeah, you guys couldn't eat shrimp, you couldn't eat cloven-hooved animals, you had to maybe stone people or do this or that. But now that we have the real image of God, now that God has finally come down into the world and shown himself to us, his message to us is all of that, the purpose of all those laws has been completed. It's over. Now we have the new laws, the new commandment, and really just the good news, the evangelion. Does that make sense? Do you see the distinction or no?
I kind of understand what you're trying to say, but you're still kind of you have a bias, so you're kind of twisting what he's saying.
Okay.
Fulfilling is just carrying out specifically what the law says. Like, otherwise he would say what you just said, which is like, we don't have to follow these laws anymore. We can change them to our I guess our new objective view of morality.
But isn't that what he says when he says that it's not what goes into you that defiles you, but what comes out of you? I should find that specifically. It's like, isn't that a change or no?
I don't see how that correlates in any way, because I don't know what that has to do with the Mosaic laws. I mean,
Or is
he
that
still
not is
says.
that not in response to a Mosaic law or no?
Pull up the verse. We'll
Yeah,
take
let
a
me
look
find.
at.
Okay, it's not what.
Because he's still referring to the laws that God was saying, and I just can't see how those are moral or righteous in any sort of way. And I know people say like, oh well, for the time that was way more moral than what they had been doing, you know, like.
Sure. There's that argument or whatever. Yeah.
But if there's a God that's, you know, all knowing and his perfect view of morality, he should be way ahead of any sort of time if he lives outside of time. Have
Yeah,
a
I mean,
perfect view of
he has
morality and
God
is
would
ready.
even no matter how good God is, he would still have to take into account the free will choice of the people, the ancient Near East people, as well as how hard their hearts are. So that's another way of framing it, is that God sort of has to meet you where you're at. Not he doesn't have to, but it basically wants so as to not violate your free will, meet you where you're at in terms of the hardness of your heart. So to say that God would give laws, like for instance, the way to treat slaves amongst the Jews in the ancient Near East, am I saying that God wants people to have slaves? Absolutely not. But if the entire world is hell bent on having slaves, God's at least going to give you the best way to treat the slaves. Does that make sense?
He could have just abolished it entirely, though, and he chose not to.
I'm not sure
I
it's that
mean,
simple
there's,
because so you could start with slavery. So he abolishes slavery outright. So he should abolish all evil, right?
well, yeah, I mean, he was the creator of
Okay,
evil,
so
so
how do you abolish all evil? Who created
uh,
evil?
you,
Who
you
introduced
create a
evil into
world
the world?
without evil. I think, well, the problem of evil, I like what Alex O'Connor says. He
Uh-huh.
refers to it as the problem of suffering,
Yep,
because
yep,
suffering is more of a natural occurrence. It's
of
easier to
course.
explain in a world
Mm-hmm.
where it's not created just for not really any purpose. I
Yep.
mean, the only reason we have suffering is kind of like a negative to pleasure and happiness and like living a good life. I mean,
Okay, I think that's possible, but I wouldn't agree that that's the reason we have suffering though.
we could create there is a possible world where there's no suffering, you know, at all.
Yeah,
And
but what does that possible world look like? That would mean no free will, right? Or no?
well, we would still have free will. I mean, I
How
don't
so?
really necessarily think that um, we control how we turn out or what our actions turn into. I think that our environment
Yeah.
controls what we turn into.
Okay, so
And
let me be clear about
our
what
experiences,
cosmology and sort of ontology I'm
like the
dealing with.
cosmological argument is
No,
what
no,
you're
I mean
gonna.
we could do that, but that's not where I'm going to. Sorry, I misled you with my words there. Let me be clear about where I perceive the source of evil to be, and I think this is purely biblical, is that it was Satan's fall that introduced suffering, right? So we don't have to talk about evil, just suffering in general, which is a form of evil, I think, into the whole universe, into the world. So so to answer Alex O'Connor's like sort of question of animal suffering, how is this feasible under a good, loving God? Well, it's feasible because God created an angel, an extremely powerful angel, with the purpose and the intent of that angel being good and worshiping him. But because God is good and loving, he can't create an agent that doesn't have free will. So if a
Well, he's
extremely powerful
sorry.
angel decides to fall and introduce all this evil into the world, what should God have done? Not given him free will or not create him at all?
I would say he's all knowing, so he did create him for the purpose of bringing evil into the world.
No, but just because
Um,
God knows just because God knows something is going to happen doesn't mean that's the purpose that he created him for. But also,
what
God
do
is
you
so
think the
merciful
purpose
and
that
great
he
that all
created
the
Satan?
evil. Well, sorry, go ahead.
What did you think the purpose that he created the devil for was?
To worship God and perhaps to even like create and hold the physical universe. I mean, I don't know. We're told that Satan is sort of like the prince of this earth or the ruler of this earth, the ruler of this realm. So it's total. I mean, it makes much more sense and is more consistent with the God of love that we see in the Bible, that he would have created Satan with the intent of having extreme power over like the physical and manifest reality. But if
Well,
God loves someone, he can't take away their free will. Love is like a reciprocal thing. Or do you disagree with that?
I think that free will. The thing about free will is, I don't believe in a God, so I believe that
Okay.
we have just kind of there are natural occurrences, random occurrences, and
Okay.
uh, our life is kind of like predisposed to go a certain way. based on our environment and what we're
Sure.
born into, what we've experienced.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't really necessarily believe in free will. I think that kind
No,
of
I get
life
you.
just is going to have one single course. That's not, you don't really have, well, you have choices, but it's going to
do you-
go one specific way.
Totally. And so that's sort of the Alex O'Connor. I think that's the conception that Alex O'Connor has, right? And sort of one that you have to have under a naturalist, materialist structure. Is that fair? Like, sorry, let me just ask you a question. Is the source of your disbelief in free will the fact that things just sort of unfold according to natural laws or something like that?
Yeah, I think that suffering is much more easily explained by random occurrences, random, you know, like biological organisms fight for food or whatever they need, and it's kind of like a competitive environment, and suffering just kind of goes along with that.
Okay.
And so it's not necessarily evil, and like I would say an animal getting trapped in the woods and dying like a slow, painful death isn't really evil necessarily. But it's suffering, and it's not deserved in any way, because you say that we have, like, what's it called, original sin, but animals have no part of that, and yet they have to endure much more physical suffering than humans do.
Sure.
There's just as much of a conscious being as we are. They just don't have
Sure.
the
And
self.
so let me be clear, because just so I've talked about this on the channel, but just so you know where I'm at in terms of animal, this is important for theodicy, for animal suffering. It's my intuition. I don't want to be heretical, but it's my intuition that animals, all the animals, especially because they're undeserving of their suffering and because they don't have sin, they don't choose it. There's no moral progress to be had by the deer trapped in the forest fire or whatever it is, that they will be glorified in heaven and put at the right hand of the Father with us, right? So in that sense, how do you say that it's impossible? Maybe you're not saying this, but is it that you're saying it's impossible for a good, loving God to exist, given the fact that there's this sort of like unreasonable animal suffering in the world, or no?
Yeah, not just because of animal suffering, because of the amounts of random suffering that occur to humans as well as the laws that he's given to the people, the things that he's done, the things he's commanded.
Okay,
like
so
the Israelites slaughtering.
Are there certain goods that can only be had like through? And I know you're talking about random suffering, so I'm just trying to like sort of build to something. But is it possible for God, or really anyone, to make a greater good out of some amount of suffering, out of some evil thing or some suffering? Can they?
I don't really
make
think
something
there's
better
any
out of
good or beauty in suffering, if that's what you're trying to ask.
You don't think there's
No.
nothing good? So you don't think courage is good? Or?
Actually, I think that I kind of lost my point. What were you going to say there?
Okay, I was just going to ask. Well, I asked if there's anything better, like any greater good or any good that can come out of suffering, that can be transmuted or like created from suffering, that wouldn't even exist without the suffering. Like, for instance, courage. You cannot be courageous if there's no fear, right?
Right. So you're saying like empathy exists because of suffering,
Sure,
or like
yeah.
love exists because of hate, type of thing. But the only reason we need the empathy, only reason we need any of that, is because suffering exists. So I mean, if
we certainly need those things because suffering exists. But is that the only reason those things are good? Like, what makes those qualities great? What is the great making feature of those qualities?
I guess I would just say, from my subjective moral perspective, that empathy is good because.
Okay, so it's subjective, right?
Yeah, it's subjective.
Okay, so that's.
I mean, unfortunately,
but you see the problem, right? You're starting to see the problem if morality is subjective.
Not really, no, because unfortunately, morality is subjective, because it's much easier explained in a world with random suffering that people have their own views of morality, what is right and wrong. Some people think rape is okay, some people think killing random people is okay.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that's true. It's
according
a
to you,
reality.
if
but-
morality is simply so there's no objective dimension to morality. Like rape is not objectively wrong according to this view, then. Or
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in. Oh, but you would say that.
I would say that. I think that rape is very wrong.
Of course,
I think the
of
way
course,
that
yeah.
most humans work is you
That
can look at something and you say, "Oh, I wouldn't want that to happen to me. I can understand the suffering,"
Yep.
and so then it's wrong. I mean, some people there's psychopaths. There's people that have
Sure.
problems with morality, and it's hard to even understand the concept of empathy.
So what
And so
happens when you have a
things like that
psychopathic
aren't
society? What happens when all the subjective entities in a society decide that something like child sacrifice, or we can talk about a recent example is the Holocaust, decide that something horrible is acceptable?
Oh, that's a terrible thing, I'd say. I mean,
But why?
it's just
It's their subjective view. It's the whole society's subjective view.
right,
If it's all
and
subjective,
to them,
yeah.
right, then I guess in a intersubjective way, it would be okay to do, which is, in my personal opinion and most people's opinion, incorrect. I mean, unfortunately, we do live in a world where that is the reality. I mean, there's no objective laws. Otherwise, I know Jesus says it's written on our hearts, but
Right.
I think that that's just the same way of thinking. Like, I mean, for example,
Mhm.
a psychopath, like I was saying earlier, it's
Yeah,
written on their hearts that some terrible things are okay to do. And just from birth into their experiences through life, they learn that they gain pleasure from pain,
Right.
things like that.
Right.
And so to them, it's written differently on their hearts. So I
Okay.
think it's a little unfair if you know what I mean.
But
It's not complete.
only in your view is it written different. Like, so the way that I would frame that, or the way that I would look at the psychopath, is that there's an objective standard of morality that just exists, regardless of anyone's subjective experience. So if your subjective experience is like pain and suffering, and you think it's okay to kill and murder and all this, that's not what's written on your heart fundamentally. But maybe it is. Okay, maybe in this perspective it is. That's like the overriding thing, like Satan gets to your heart first or something like that, or it's written so much on your mind and your body that you just do it anyway. I would never say that guy is right. I would never say that
that's
guy
your
has a
subjective
true
opinion.
moral code, a true moral structure. He has a completely false one. But if you say that morality ultimately on the most fundamental level is subjective, then I don't understand how you can say that about the psychopath.
Well, I can from a subjective point of view.
Right. But then
And that's
anybody
why
that
I
has the
think
other
morality is
subjective point of view can say the
Like
exact opposite.
each moral question, I think, can be explained with a subjective answer. You know what I mean? Because we're all going to disagree, and I think that's an objective truth that we all have subjective views of what morality is.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
if you get what I'm saying.
I mean,
and so-
I laugh because it's like you're saying there's an objective truth, which I think you're going to deny if I ask you how you know that or where you find that.
Well,
but
it's different from what you're saying. I was saying that it's an objective truth that we all have subjective views of morality.
okay,
So
sure.
it's not an objective
Sure,
truth that there
sure.
is one view
Got
of
you.
morality. It's an
Got you.
objective truth.
Got you.
That it is subjective in general.
Right.
So,
well,
like, you
and then
could
we would
ask-
go to what is objective truth, but I understand maybe what you're saying is it's intersubjectively true that we have a subjective view of morality. Is that what you're saying?
I would say objectively true because we can prove that people have different views of what is right and wrong. Like if you go on death row and you ask some of the most horrible people, they will think genuinely that what they've done is right and they don't regret it. Some will regret their decision. And then, there's the large amount of people, a lot of people make what is right and wrong based on how, like, they wouldn't want it to happen to them. So like a motive,
Rule. Yep. Gotcha. Yeah. Absolutely.
which is kind of like what I believe in.
Okay.
That's really our best tool in knowing what is right and wrong, and that is flawed in some people's psychology, and so they
So sorry,
don't
what is the
have
best
the-
tool for knowing what's right and wrong? Just the intersubjective opinion, basically, of is it the majority of humanity or the majority
not
of humans that are
objective,
right,
just
or what?
intersubjective would mean that it's basically what most people agree with.
Most
Which
people.
I guess, yeah, it can sway, like you
But
said.
so then slavery is fine.
It is a hypothetical possibility that everyone could think eventually that genocide is okay, murder is
Well, we don't
okay.
have to go hypothetical. We don't have to go hypothetical. Until the, what, 1700s, early 1800s, everybody in the world thought slavery was okay. So slavery is okay?
Oh, well, intersubjectively at the time it was okay, yes.
So
But now
there you go. That's okay. I'm not trying to get you in any sort of gotcha, and I'm not trying to prove anything. I think from what I'm getting, I'm not going to convert you, and you're not going to convert me, but that's okay because the conversation's still interesting. But I do want to point out what one of the costs of this view is. Do you agree
I
that
don't
that's
think
that's
that-
a major cost to pay
I
that
do
you have to
understand.
say intersubjectively, which is the only way, the only true morality is intersubjective morality. So intersubjectively, in other words, morally, truly, as long as everyone believes it, slavery's okay. Is that, are you willing to
I
accept
agree
that
that that's
cost?
I agree that's a terrible thing, but we can't deny that it's the truth. You know, we can't deny that that is possible.
Well, I
and
can. I
that-
can deny that that's possible.
And yeah, well, you can, but you would be wrong because you'd be saying that there's an objective truth of what's right and wrong. When
But
in
how have
reality,
you haven't proven to me that there's no objective truth. You're just saying it seems like everybody does have a subjective view of truth. So I agree with you on that premise, that axiom.
well, there is truth is objective inherently, though. So whatever the truth
Mm-hmm.
is going to be the truth as a whole. It won't. There's no like
But that doesn't apply to
swaying
morality,
either
or
way. It doesn't really apply to morality, but let me explain this because
Okay.
we're the only moral agents on this
Sure.
planet. So
Well,
we're the only
to be fair,
species
to be
that's
clear,
able to
okay, I
set
would
the
add in
moral
angels
standard.
and demons. But anyway, keep going. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I know you believe in angels and demons, but I would say take a minute to look into my point of view. So
Yes, of course.
if you live on a planet where we're the only species that has this high level of consciousness, where we're able to understand what is right and wrong on a subjective level, we are the moral agents that set the moral standard for the world.
Yep.
So it is important that we do what's right, and I think our standard of what is right and wrong is what we feel is right and wrong, basically. And yeah, I know that can turn bad, but I think that most people wouldn't agree that like rape or genocide is okay.
Right.
And morality is a constantly evolving thing. Like over time, it changes and changes. You know, like gay people are now allowed to be married.
Yep.
And
Right.
I don't really agree with the whole transgender thing because I'm very rooted in objective truths. And
Yep.
it's
Good.
hard to say that someone can be an objective female or male if they objectively biologically are not.
Right. Yeah.
But then I do look at gender a little. It is a little weird with gender because I guess you can sort of define yourself any way you want to.
Yeah.
And no one can really stop you.
Yeah. So that
I don't want to move the conversation around.
No, that's
though.
okay. I mean, I like that part of the conversation. It's a very interesting point, and I just think it almost conflicts with your earlier statement. So like, it's hard for me to see how you can believe in objective truth, like some sort of transcendent truth. I mean, you don't want to use that language, so I understand that. So let's keep it to objective truth, but not objective morality. Like, why would one sort of I do want to use the word transcendent, but in that I just mean greater than materiality, right? Like there's like a metaphysic truth or something like that. Is that fair?
Yeah.
So why is there not a metaphysic morality? Everybody observes it. Like you said, most people, the vast majority of people know you shouldn't rape, murder, kill, steal, all these very basic things. So what's the base, like, so my thing is like, it seems improbable or impossible to trust any sort of like moral structure that simply comes from the chaos and the entropy of like biology and evolution, because biology and evolution are clearly very violent processes, right? So it's hard for me to trust a morality that just comes from that, and equally so with truth. So how do you get to a truth from the violent process of evolution and biology?
Well, there is no really necessarily concrete truth unless we invented morality kind of because we're the first conscious beings that are able to understand empathy the way that we do.
Okay.
So
I guess we are, but I mean, they're, chimps will help each other out, and I mean, I guess you could.
Yeah.
It's like a more basic form, but there's like a shadow of it within
right.
biology. So
The objective truth in my belief would be that it's an objective truth that we all have different views of morality, and it is subjective. And
okay,
I mean, I know that what your objective truth would be just what was written in the Bible. And I mean, like some of the examples I gave, like,
hmm
if God says so, really anything goes. I don't know why we can believe that we be more morally righteous than our God if, I don't think he's worth worshiping. If he's okay with all these genocides and murders, I mean, you'd agree that it's not okay to like kill your son if he's
no.
disrespectful, right? Stone him to death or kill the virgin even if she's not a virgin with the current scientific process that they had at the time, which is just did she bleed on her wedding night, which
Right.
like 4 women don't.
Yeah. So I hadn't heard this virginal example before, so it's interesting. I'll have to think about that and look at it. Was that the thing in Deuteronomy 22? We can look at it real quick.
Yeah, Deuteronomy 22. It was around like 14 or so.
Yeah, 14. Okay, so this is the part of her. This is the part of it. So, okay, so give occasion of speech against her and say, I took this woman and I found her not to be a virgin. Actually, maybe NRSV is going to be a little easier for us to decipher, but happy to read it in any translation. But thank you for coming on, brother. A lot of people don't feel comfortable coming onto the Discord, but it's so much easier to talk about this kind of stuff when we.
I was a little nervous. My voice was a little shaky at first. I've never done this. But...
Oh, cool. Well, welcome, man. Seriously, there's nothing to be afraid about. You sound great. You've got some great arguments, so I'm excited to talk.
I was a former Catholic too. I grew up a altar boy. I'm 19 now. I'll give you a little bit of backstory.
Yeah, please.
My dad is a devout Catholic. He's becoming a deacon soon, so he's very devout.
Wow, a deacon. Okay.
Yeah, he's a deacon, and I guess just when I was younger, my dad is one of the more what would you call it? Corporal punishment types, right?
Okay, I understand.
It kind of aligns with how God is in the Bible.
I understand.
I don't think for some people, there are a lot of amazing Christians, don't get me wrong.
Of course, yeah.
Especially when you really take everything in the Bible into your heart, even, what's in the Old Testament. It can really hurt yourself and the people around you,
Interesting.
Like my dad thinks he's God type of person, But...
So what I would say to that, and I have to get into this more, but I was watching a video recently, and it was the one of the headlines was, or like one of the little parts of the video was that the Old Testament was never meant to be a eternal commandment, essentially. So I'm going to research that more and get back to you on that. And that's what I truly believe. That's what I read in the Gospels, is that Jesus comes and says, look, yes, maybe you needed to have this and maybe you needed to have that. Or you did. I mean, he affirms, obviously. I'm not trying to downplay the level to which he was a legitimate first century Jew, a rabbi even. So, of course, he's going to agree with all the laws and stuff like that. But when I read that which goes out of you defiles you, and when I read that I am the fulfillment of the prophets and the law, maybe I'm wrong about this, so I appreciate you helping me out. But the thing that lands on my heart is that this is the real teaching. Another two verses I love is when the man comes to Jesus and says, look, dude, there is so much stuff to remember. I don't know how to follow all these laws and all the stuff you're telling me in the Old Testament stuff.
Yeah.
Can you just give me
all the contradictions too.
Yeah, can you just give me 2 commandments? Like, I just want to be a Christian, but I'm just not that. I don't have that big of a brain. I can't keep it all in there and remember it all. Can you just give me 2 commandments? And Jesus says, these are the 2 commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and your mind and your strength. So that could mean a lot. Fair enough. And to love your neighbor as yourself, this golden rule. And he says, this is the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. These two. So everything should be subsumed into those two. And if they don't, like for instance, the commandment to kill a virgin when I sleep with her on my wedding night, it's like, am I 6000 BC Hebrew? Like, am I gonna, is anyone I marry gonna be a virgin? Probably not. Probably not. Anyway, forget that. That's just a little joke. But a lot of this stuff is so specific to the culture and to the time because it is relatively a historical text. Maybe not how we would take down history now, but it's about as historical as it ever gets for that time period.
Yeah.
And it's important that it's written by people. It is divinely inspired, but it's not God writing out a script and then placing the script in front of them and they publish it or whatever. It's a feeling, it's an emotion that they have in their heart that they're translating as a human into this text. So, you know,
Right.
I'm
Do you
not
think
I'm not a fundamentalist, a literalist, but okay, sorry. Yeah.
So are you saying that kind of like their subjective views are kind of injected into the Bible, like especially with Paul, like St. Paul, and he added a lot of stuff when he was creating like the first church, like with women and
Yeah.
there's a lot of like his views that were kind of implemented into the Bible when
Sure.
Jesus was gone. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, so I want to be clear, and I don't want to be heretical. So, because this is, I want to be consistent and clear. So, do I believe that people's subjective views are relevant in terms of what's taken down in the Bible? Absolutely, of course. Because like Mark is going to notice that there's two thieves mocking Jesus, and Luke is going to notice that maybe they were both mocking him, but one of them actually turned around and said this, and Jesus said that, and then the other one didn't, right? So there's going to be different subjective perspectives represented in the Bible, absolutely. It's also my belief, though, and this might be where it's troubling, that everything that's in the Bible is absolutely meant to be there, okay? And so that doesn't mean there aren't hard passages. So, like, something about this genocide or whatever, it would be a lot more convenient for me to believe in the Bible and believe in Christ if that stuff just was not in there. But God doesn't make anything convenient. I don't see why he should. So it's my job to understand why it's in there, understand some reason that the loving God that I know primarily from experience and from relationship with, why he can add this in. And then you start to unlock these sort of like areas of your mind. For one thing, you're really thrust into the imagination of an actual ancient person, which is fascinating. Slavery abounding, nations fighting nations. It's like this dramatic Tolkien-esque story. And importantly, the end of the story, the conclusion of the story must be taken into consideration with the entire story. So if there's this amount of suffering and pain and evil and stuff like that, well, thank God that's not the end of the story. There's a savior who comes, who wipes out the evil, who gives us eternal glorification and grace in heaven, where, like, say you suffer for 1,000 years, you personally suffer for 1,000 years, and then you die, and then you spend infinity years with God in heaven. And by, I don't really mean years, I just mean you spend eternity in years. That number, like 1,000 over eternity, is zero. It's infinitesimally small. So any bad can be canceled out by the grace of God and by his mercy. That's ultimately the message that I see. So, but I do love getting into the details. I love to like the so-called contradictions. I love to take those apart and play with them. I'm not afraid of them. I want to get into them and see exactly what's going on here, because then I think we learn a lot about the God's grace and the history and a lot of stuff. So anyway, sorry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I used to do that a lot when I was a Christian too. I feel like you can take a lot of good from the Bible, just as you can take a lot of good from maybe like a Berenstein Bears book. Like one of the bears breaks their leg and then come home and they learn like a family lesson. But
yeah,
you know, it's a lot of mental gymnastics to when you're dealing with the truth claim, and we really have to have, you know, concrete evidence that this is reality in order for us to go forward with believing in it.
But is morality purely material? Can morality can reality be allegorical? Can it be metaphysical? Can it be you understand where reality is such a,
I mean,
a
the reality
wide
that
word?
we know is in front of us, and it's observable through science. Like, you know, we just, I mean, I'm obsessed with the James Webb Telescope. Like, we launched the
Yeah,
thing.
isn't that
It's so
awesome?
cool.
Isn't that so
We're
cool?
able to see 3 million years after the creation of the universe. And I mean, I said creation there, but
Funny. Yeah, I get you.
and
Though. I
then
get you. Yeah.
and then, but if you think about it, like 1,000, 2,000 years down the line, we're going to create an even better telescope where we can see the beginning of the universe. We can
Sure.
see to the creating of time, and we can study how things actually did start. And so I don't think we should fill in the answers just yet until we have the ability to even observe what it might possibly be.
I understand.
We
I
don't
understand.
we don't have a way of knowing what that is until we have the evidence for it, you know. And
But this is sort. Do you see it? This is sort of descending into a science of the gaps versus a God of the gaps thing. And I know no one's ever heard of that, so they always make fun of me. Science of the gaps, but it is a real thing. So you just made an implicit assumption that if we build a big enough telescope, essentially, I know not literally, but essentially, then we will
you know
be
what
able
reminds
to
me of?
observe
The
certain
Bible
things.
verse where they build the tower to try to find God.
Yeah, the Tower of Babel. Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going. Sorry. Yeah.
No. It's just that the implication here is that the Bible should be a scientific text, or that the only way to ascertain truth is through science. And so I
Right.
just disagree with that. I think there's things that are obviously true that are absolutely not scientific. Like, for instance, I don't know if you have a girlfriend or a wife or a mother or a sister that you just love and that they love you. How do you can't possibly scientifically prove to me that they do or that you love them even, but you know from experience, from evidence, from just living that that's true. That is a true statement.
Well,
Does that make sense?
we actually can prove because you know we have the endorphins and you know hormones and all this stuff that you know you can really observe the brain in love and see that it is in love from a biological
But
perspective.
does that tell you anything true about what love is?
Yeah, it's an emotion. It's subjective. I mean, people have so many different forms of love, you know.
Yeah.
Some people have almost an inability to love.
Yeah.
It's it's one of
But
those
like
things like you could
the
say
quality.
anger couldn't be explained scientifically. But I feel like it
So, but if okay, this I guess let me be more clear. The point that I'm trying to make is like, okay, so you read a scientific treatise on anger or whatever. You read like a whole paper, an essay, and it tells you
Yeah.
every single hormone involved, and this is when people get angry, and this is when they don't get angry, and like, oh, this neuron fires to this neuron, and that's everyone who gets angry that has this neural pathway and this connection. But if you are some sort of sociopath or alien that's never experienced anger, does that tell you what it's like to be angry? Like, does that have any? Do you see what I'm saying here? That's
Well,
like it's
no,
like there's a
but you don't have
qualitative, there's a
the physical
quality of
capability.
anger and of love that can only be described in terms of that like very momentary experience of loving or being angry. Do you know what I mean?
Kinda, but we still are able to explain it like scientifically. I mean, yeah, you're right. Some people can't experience it, but they can't experience it because of how their brain is wired, you know. It can
But
be
I'm just saying,
explained
if so, then if you tried to explain it to them scientifically, would that do anything for them? Would that allow
Probably.
them to experience anger?
No, because they have an inherent inability to
Yeah.
experience it.
Yeah.
What does that allude to, though?
What does it allude to? That well, I'm just trying to make the point that there are certain things, for instance, like I was using love to say that you can't prove that somebody loves you. I still think you can't really, even though you can describe the endorphins and the hormones and the things like that. I don't see how you can get a scientific proof that like your wife loves you. Even if you examined all her endorphins and her hormones and stuff, that she might just love the way your hair looks that day or something like that. You know what I mean? Or she might love her
The thing about
boyfriend
love
off in Iowa that she thinks of every time she sees you. Like, you know, there's no fundamental proof. You just sort of take it as on the basis of evidence and the feeling of it, really.
Well, I mean, there is the proof, like we said, like biological proof, endorphins in the brain. This, you can study the brain and what's happening while you are in love. But yeah, like you're saying, like you just can't prove that someone else is conscious. You can't
Right.
prove that
Sure.
someone else,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
mean, but we really do know that someone else is conscious, because I mean, we're not
Right.
going to have a brain monitor hooked up to them 24/7 just to know
Right.
that they're conscious, but
Right.
we are able to know that they are.
Right. And I would say just like that in the Bible, it's like, yeah, is the Genesis story a scientific description of the beginning of the universe? Of course not. I mean, I know there are fundamentalists, young earth creationists that believe that. I'm not one of those. I think as a Catholic, you know that a lot of Christians are not like that. Or maybe they were in your Catholic denomination, actually. That's an
Well,
interesting
Catholics
question.
are very, very fundamental. So some, but
Some, but not
not
all.
all.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
not to be clear, I'll give you a little background on me. I was raised basically as a Baptist, and then sort of Episcopalian as well, but
Oh,
basically as a
nice. My
Baptist.
middle name's John. So I
Oh
was the
yeah,
initial
John,
John.
nice. That's great, brother.
Yeah.
That's great.
Um,
And so that I got totally turned off because a lot of them were fundamentalist, basically young earth creationists. I grew up in South Carolina. We had science classes. We didn't once learn about evolution. And then I moved to the north to New York and I had a science class. And the teacher was like, okay, so last year we learned all about the evolutionary tree of hominids and this. Now I go, hold on, wait a second. What? What are you talking about? I'd never heard of this. So
Yeah.
I became deeply distrustful of religion and the
Right.
faith, became an atheist, agnostic, went on my own spiritual journey, traveled throughout, like mentally traveled throughout the Eastern traditions, and especially got into New Age and stuff like that, and eventually came back to Christianity with this new perspective that, oh, I'm allowed to interpret the text. I'm allowed to read it in the proper genre. I'm allowed to read it with some level of nuance and detail, and I'm allowed to read it, especially, which helped me, was allegorically for Genesis. So I don't expect any science from the Bible, like almost none. I
Yeah.
expect a little bit of history, especially from the Gospels. I expect a historicity of the Gospels based on my studies that they are historical documents. I mean, they're pretty much as legit as you get in terms of describing a historical figure. Like, we have more evidence for Jesus than Alexander the Great, for instance, but nobody says Alexander the Great didn't exist or didn't take over the known world or whatever, you know. So anyway,
great
regardless
thing-
of that, but yeah,
The great thing I like about science is with religion, it's answers before questions, and then science is questions before answers. So things that we don't fully know, we don't. I know that a lot of Christians are like, oh, well, you can't explain this. Well, yeah, I mean, we don't have the scientific capabilities of explaining
Yeah.
everything in the universe all yet. But the problem is that religion kind of jumps to these conclusions before asking any of the
and
questions.
I would say religion does that
the-
to its own detriment, 100%. I mean, that's the God of the gaps right there. So I'll if I accidentally argue for a God of the gaps, you keep me honest and call me out, but I try to be careful to never argue just because I don't know how this is supposed to be, therefore it's God. I try to never fall into that trap because that is a trap, and that's a bad position.
So you do have a open-mindedness that there isn't a God, and that you do
Yes.
understand that the
Yes.
world can work the way it does without a God.
Well,
That's the thing
another,
about
that's another
science
question.
as
That's
well.
another question. I have an open-mindedness, but nobody's been able to explain to me how the fine-tuning argument and how the cosmological argument can be resolved, and the moral argument, because there are certain things that I'm not willing to sacrifice anymore. At a certain point when I was New Age and agnostic and all that, I was willing to sacrifice objective morality. Like, I was willing to say, like, yeah, everything's subjective. Like, I guess if everybody believed, like, rape was okay, then it would be okay. Truth is subjective, so, like, you know, your truth is just as good as my truth and stuff like that. I was willing to make those sacrifices. I'm not willing to, I don't know if, so you're going to call this closed-minded, but I'm not sure how we can be so certain that, like you, as you stated before, that morals simply are subjective. I understand we all have a subjective view of morality, but it's not obvious to me that nothing is right and nothing is wrong on the most fundamental level.
Yeah, I guess we're just gonna have to disagree on
That's
that
fair.
one, because
That's totally fair. Yeah.
because I really don't know how to explain it other than like we did before. I think that it's
Well, I'd be
subjective,
interested. So,
and I can't.
do you have you heard of the fine tuning argument? Moving on from war, so I think
Yeah,
we
I
did
have
talk
heard
about
of the
that.
fine tuning argument. My rebuttal to that would be that I mean, we shaped to our environment didn't really shape to us, and it's pretty easily explainable
But
through natural
what about
occurrences.
the low entropy state but like forget us, because I think I was talking to someone else about this like last week, and it was like, yeah, it's actually not that fine tuned because we die from cancer from the sun, right? And we're, the Earth, the Goldilocks zone is way bigger. That like 25% of all planets, that of observable planets, like are in this Goldilocks zone, so it's way bigger. But it still doesn't address certain questions about the constants, the laws, so the low entropy state at the beginning of the universe, the odds of that, the conditions being met for that are supposedly 1 over 10 to the 10 to the 123rd power, which is just an unimaginable number. So how does that, like, are you saying that the probability of us existing is exactly 1 because we exist?
It's very, very unlikely that we do exist, and I
Right.
think that we should be grateful for our existence because we're a very unique species that's able to perceive the world in an extremely unique way that no other species is able to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if we were created in a completely different environment, different biological needs, maybe we ate, I don't know, something completely different, we didn't need to eat, we just inhaled something from the environment. I don't
Yeah.
even know, but we would think that it was made for us, without
Well, I would totally.
research and without the further research that the world we actually shaped to our world, which does make a lot more sense,
Well, I agree with. I think if we breathed like sulfur instead of oxygen, that wouldn't do anything to discredit like the fine tuning of the beginning of the universe, like the fact that the weak force would have to be exactly what it is, the strong nuclear force, the low entropy state. Like there's things that just lead to even the possibility of matter existing that are already orders of magnitude more improbable than just like any type of life forming.
Yeah,
You see what I
it
mean?
is incredibly improbable that we exist, but
Yeah.
I mean we do, and
Right.
I think that's obviously a big thing that people use to say, oh well, then we must have been created, but I mean
Well, not
that's
necessarily. I
just
don't want to
jumping to a
jump to
conclusion.
created, but there must be some in. So do things that have an extremely low probability, like I don't know, like have you ever heard the example in like a science class that like, well, gravity could just like reverse right now, like it could, but the
Yeah,
probability is 1 over basically impossible, right? It's like 1
right.
over.
It's a bunch of monkeys on
Right. Do
typewriters.
monkeys ever create the completed works of Shakespeare? Is essentially the question. And to
Right.
me, it's not obvious that they do, but to you, you're saying they do.
I don't think that. I mean, it's possible. It's um highly likely that they would if they were given an infinite amount of time. But
Okay.
we have no proof that we have an infinite amount of time in our universe.
And I'm gonna actually
I mean,
give a challenge to the infinite amount of
yeah,
time.
I
'Cause
mean, it's a
that's the
hypothetical,
only
though,
resolution
and
that I've been able to see that
um,
anyone's ever presented to me.
I,
Like, oh, if there's infinite time,
I,
maybe this could happen, right? Okay.
I
Go.
do
Keep going.
believe that there we were fine tuned. Don't get me wrong, but I think
Okay.
we were fine tuned by our environment. I
By
don't
the
think that
infinity of like either multiverses or time or something like that.
by the no specific being or anything. I think that's kind of jumping to a conclusion, but I think
Sure.
that we were fine tuned by our environment. Like
We were
by
Well, the
we started as
environment
a cell,
itself is
we
what's
had different
fine-tuned.
needs, and those
Is it?
needs
Is it?
grew as the environment changed, and we evolved into a being that's able to, move around the world in a
Right.
different way.
But I
I mean,
completely agree with that. But what do you say to the claim that the environment itself is what's fine-tuned?
the environment, I don't. Well, the environment's fine tuned by the universe, and
Okay,
then we're
so
gonna
then we're
go
at
up.
the
And then
universe.
we're
So
gonna
then,
go
so
up
then
into
we go.
cloud.
How is the universe possible, right? And then
Right,
you
I know
mentioned
where you're going,
infinite
but
time, right?
then we're gonna go to the answer of what started the universe. Everything has to have a beginning, quote unquote. But
Mhm.
I'm not a quantum physicist. I think that there's no,
Right. Right.
but I don't think that there's any before time. and we do know that time started at the beginning of the universe.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in
And that's
before.
kind of a way we can know that the universe is possibly finite and not infinite.
Yep.
Because we can't know that it will go on forever. But I think it's a very big leap to say that it was created by something that doesn't have a possibility of being explained or being created. I mean, if we can apply the logic that the universe came from nothing, from God.
Well, it would come from God like he would have created it ex nihilo, right?
Right, but
essentially the same thing. But
God
that means
has
there
the
is something that it could have come it came from.
But if God has the ability to have been and always will be, I don't know why our universe doesn't have that ability as well.
Okay, let me ask: have you heard of the Hilbert Hotel thought experiment, the paradox?
Yeah, I have.
So, is it logical to you, or is it a higher probability to you that you can have an infinite set of real material things or days, given these paradoxes?
Which paradoxes?
Okay, so the Hilbert Hotel paradox is that if you had a hotel
right, where you fill the room, everyone moves one over.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's always
So
the same
if you
amount
subtract
of people,
infinite guests from infinite guests, then you either get infinite or you get any number you want, depending on which room they start checking out from, right? So it could be 3 or 7 or 8 or so that just says that infinity is not identical. It doesn't follow the most basic law of logic, the law of identity, that P equals P. So infinity does not equal infinity. That seems more probabilistic to you, that there is a real infinity?
No, I don't think we have any. Well, I know that we don't have any proofs of infinity. There's nothing that lives on for infinity. Actually, there is I don't know if you ever heard of it. This is really cool. There's this worm that lives infinitely. It can be cut in half and it'll turn into 2 worms. It can be cut into 3. It'll turn into 3 worms.
Sweet.
And it's like completely immune to any viruses, anything like that.
I wonder if it's immune to being shot into the sun.
I mean, I'm sure that wouldn't go so well. But maybe when it takes over the universe, because it's basically infinite life expectancy. But we don't have any evidence that infinity exists at all. I mean, it's just a concept. So we can't know that it exists in any way. We can't know that God.
Well, we know it exists abstractly because we use it in math. It's used all over in math. So infinity.
Well, it doesn't. I guess exist would be a strange word to use for that, but it's
the way I was framing it is that a real set of infinite things is possible.
Yeah.
And especially
possible is also hard too.
Okay, sure. Yeah, maybe not possible. Okay, so yeah, it just seems less likely to me that there can be a material infinity than a abstract infinity. And God, almost by definition, is abstract. So it makes sense that he could be infinite. But
it does.
But materiality is less clear to me, could possibly be infinite. But you're right, I can't make that claim. I can't be like, it is impossible. I know for a fact. You're right, because I'm not a quantum physicist. I don't know. But just with what I'm working with right now, the answers to the fine-tuning argument don't seem more probable. They at least seem equally improbable as my thing, right?
Well, the atheist answers the fine-tuning argument is just that we shape to our environment, and then of course when we go up to God must have created it because it had to have a beginning, with Thomas Aquinas.
That would be Aquinas, or popularized by Lane Craig with the Kalam cosmological argument. Yeah. I mean, I think that's solid too, because that one, it's just that one's so simple. It's just everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Yeah, you know the deal. And then you get into what that cause must be like if the universe includes things like space, time, material, whatever. So the cause would then have to be spaceless, timeless, immaterial. So that one.
Something I do want to get into is the ontological argument. That's something that's never been able to really I've just been like, what are you talking about?
I just spent all weekend learning about this. It's so cool. It's so cool. So
tell me your views on it, because every time I've tried to learn about it, it just seems
Yeah.
absolute
Well,
nonsense, because you can
totally,
say
totally.
the most perfect pizza must exist, or
Okay,
the
I
most
can respond to that. Thank
perfect
God I actually
unicorn.
looked into this, because I can actually respond to that. And it's actually similar to what we were talking about. So let's just lay it out for the rest of the viewers. Basically, the ontological argument introduced by Anselm in like the 1200s or something like that. He goes, God, by definition, you have to remember he's already he's a saint, he's a a deacon or whatever, archbishop or whatever. So
Yeah.
God is that than which nothing greater can be thought. It can be imagined, can be conceived. I like saying conceived.
Yeah.
That than which nothing greater can be conceived of. So then you start to do that process in your head, and then you get to this thing that than which nothing greater can be conceived. But wait, if it only exists in my mind, then there's something greater, something that exists in my mind and in reality. So that than which nothing greater can be conceived must exist in reality and in my mind. It's a crazy, and it seems totally illogical, right? It seems like you're just defining God into existence or something. Like the wool's been pulled over your eyes and it makes no sense or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is the actual response, the one you gave by a monk at the time, Guanillo. And
Right.
he says like, okay, sure, buddy, sure, Anselm. That than which, how about the island than which nothing greater can be conceived, right?
He was a Christian, by the way.
And he was a Christian, yeah, he's a Christian monk, and so he even thought this was absurd. And a lot of Christians, I'm sure, probably don't get it. And I'm not saying it's like 100. I think so. I watched a
Definitely not the best argument.
Ortland video. Yeah, it's not like the most convincing argument. It's basically only going to work emotionally if you already accept the like outcome, like the premise, right? It's basically an argument for Christians to consider and just be like, huh, that's cool. It seems like. So anyway, but so his response is the island than which nothing greater can be conceived. And then you just go, okay, so this like island that you literally just made up actually exists. And this is an important point. Anselm responds, maybe that would be true, but it's obviously not. But an important feature of the argument is that you can't actually conceive of God. Or let me put it this way. So, an island than which nothing greater can be conceived is completely irrational and illogical, because for one, what are the great making qualities of an island? Like that barely makes sense. Like what makes any island better than another island? Maybe there's more coconuts on this one, but then you could just have more coconuts or more. So anything physical, this argument cannot apply to. Anything that you actually can imagine, this argument cannot apply to. But
okay, well,
keep going.
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I want to slow down and
I was going to say, well, then I would say, if I were you, that, well, if the island was the most perfect island, it would have created the universe. It would be omnipotent, omnibenevolent. It would be conscious.
Exactly.
And then so I know where you're alluding to is, no matter what you use as the beginning, like if it's a unicorn, a piece of pizza, it's always going to end up as the greatest possible being.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like you said, you have to kind of already believe that it would exist, because it does have a conclusion without, questions or evidence for it actually possibly existing.
Right. It's not like the fine-tuning argument where like a materialist can look at it and be like, oh, damn, that actually gives me pause. Like a materialist can look at this and just be like, okay, buddy. Like, you don't... There's a rational basis to discredit this, but it's not as simple as just defining God into existence. It actually is a logical leap. I think it's a logical move, but the given is that this is like possible in some way, that the being that there is a being
that's what I'm saying is it's possible, because I think there's a lot of atheists where I'm not one of these atheists, but they're like, oh, God 100% doesn't exist. And you can't really say that. Just as you can't say like a magical unicorn that lives in the sky. Like you can't say about anything that it just doesn't exist without like
you can't
being
prove a
able
negative.
to yeah, exactly. You can't prove a negative. But yeah, I mean, that was my point.
Yeah, no, so it's just an interesting argument. Again, it's like it's not really super convincing to people that don't have like a predisposition to accepting the outcome. I think it can work. I've heard. I'm not like a grad student. I haven't gone deep in it. I've just watched a few videos over the weekend about
Yeah.
it. So I like it. I like to sit there and think about it. It's like, oh, okay, this is another thing that Gavin Ortland put it this way. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a great resource for like questions about the Bible and historicity. He's a legitimate scholar, but he's in the faith, whatever, yada, yada, yada. And his thing is this, it just hits you on this like emotional level. It's just like fitting. It's kind of like if God were real, this is the type of thing he would bake into reality. This is the type of thing where you can just sit in your armchair and close your eyes and imagine him, and then you imagine all the way up, and then you get to this shocking conclusion that, oh yeah, the fact that I can imagine all the way up like that makes him real, or like that it's just part of
Yeah,
the
it's kind of a
proof his
leap
reality.
at that point. It's a leap.
Yeah,
Before
yeah.
that's like, yeah, you can imagine this amazing being, but
Did I lose you? That might be on me because my speakers were just kind of cutting in and out. Let me make sure they're not.
in our daily life without even
Okay. Say something, if you can. I think I lost you, brother. I'm not getting any info. Okay, but you know what? Let's see what people are up to in the chat. Oh, okay, American M. Nice, dude. Welcome. I'm sorry you joined. I would let you join. You absolutely could have, but we've been going for 3 hours. So I was just about to cut it off anyway at a good stopping point, and it looks like our friend's mic just cut out, or maybe mine did. So I'm going to call the stream here. I think it was a really good one. I had a great conversation with my friend here. I wish I remembered his name. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. Yeah, sorry, I had a call there, but
Oh,
yeah,
no,
it was
you're
a
totally good.
conversation. I'll save your channel because I might want to go on another stream if you do in the future.
I appreciate it, bro, and you're welcome back anytime. It was a great conversation, and maybe I'll even have some better answers for you on some of those. Do you have a recap of what did you leave feeling? I wish I had gotten a more satisfying answer, or maybe he didn't really represent himself the best on this one, or I didn't have to push myself to think about this question. Did you leave here with anything where you're like, damn, that didn't get answered?
Well, the thing about the ontological argument is, I think just
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's never gonna really be much of a thing that'll try to, or will be able to prove like the truth claim of God. I
Sure,
understand it as
sure.
hypothetical.
Yeah.
So I think that you explained it really well. That you seem to have done your research on that good. I think, I don't know, we did good. I think it was a good
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah.
Well, I
That's good.
appreciate you, brother. Thank you for having the courage and the bravery and the wherewithal to actually ask the questions and keep up and have some thoughts in mind and keep them ordered and good for the stream. So I appreciate you a lot. You're welcome back absolutely anytime, and we can talk about whatever.
Cool.
And so it's super fun, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, brother. All right, everybody. So that was super fun. That's exactly what happens, Brandon, if you decide to grow a pair and get on the channel. Gotcha. Okay, I'm gonna read through all your comments later, but I really have been going for over 3 hours at this point, or just about. So I'm out. It was super fun, guys. Check the recaps, like and subscribe if you like, and come back tomorrow. Let's do it tomorrow, huh? Why not? I'm going to stream around noon PST pretty much every day. So if you're looking to like jump in and get into the conversation, let's do that. And maybe I'll have some kind of special stream for people, like an after work stream or something, if they can't ever make the noon thing. So just let me know in the comments, and peace, everybody. God bless you. Good luck. See you out there.